injured, suffered knife-related injuries, is being treated at the scene, as is the attacker. They're currently being treated in the Old Palace Yard. Looking at the live shot there, where you can see the two yellow ambulances inside, that's Old Palace Yard. That's where the two injured are being treated. The man who is believed to be, I shouldn't say man because sex wasn't confirmed to me, but one person who's believed to have been the attacker, armed with a knife, who was shot by a police officer, and one police officer who we understand is suffering from knife-related injuries. In addition, the source has also confirmed to me that multiple people are injured on Westminster Bridge. That, we believe, is the result of having been struck by a vehicle. Multiple people injured. He could be no more specific than multiple people. Obviously, we've been seeing some numbers on social media, but we haven't been able to independently confirm that. But what we can confirm through this source at the moment is that multiple people were struck by a vehicle on Westminster Bridge. Now, this isn't confirmed, but is speculation from the source that that same vehicle then proceeded down onto Parliament Square and crashed into the railings just outside the main entrance to Westminster itself. The suspect attacker left the vehicle and managed somehow to get into Old Palace Yard, where he was confronted, attacked an officer, and then was shot. So, as I say, that information with regard to the same vehicle coming from Westminster Bridge is this, the sort of working theory that authorities are going on at the moment. That's not 100% confirmed, but what is confirmed from a source is that multiple people are injured on Westminster Bridge, having been struck by a vehicle. 2 people are now injured in Old Palace Yard. One believed to have been an armed attacker, someone armed with a knife who managed to get in beyond the gates and into Old Palace Yard, who was confronted by a police officer. That officer, we understand, was attacked, has suffered injuries, and along with the attacker is now being treated at the scene.
Mark, for now, thanks very much.
Let's talk to Alistair Bunkle, who we believe is closer to Westminster Bridge. Alistair, what can you see from where you are?
Yes, excuse me, I my location. I'm just Waterloo Station side of Westminster Bridge, just south of the River Thames, looking at the bridge and up towards the Houses of Parliament. I've counted at least 15 ambulances or paramedics vehicles. There are a number of unmarked police cars here. The police are putting up cordons as we speak. There are paramedics running and walking up onto Westminster Bridge. Two ambulances have just left with their sirens going, probably perhaps heading towards St Thomas's Hospital, which is adjacent to this bridge. And there are a lot of people who, in this part of London, as you'd expect, would be milling around wondering what is going on. But this is a scene of sirens and blue lights and high-vis jackets as the emergency services lock down the area and they deal with whoever is injured up on the bridge.
Alistair, we're getting confirmation from London Ambulance as we speak to you that they have sent a number of ambulance crews to Westminster alongside their hazardous area response team as well. We have had reports of a number of injuries on Westminster Bridge. Can you give us any sense of what you can see from where you are?
I can't give you, it'd be wrong for me to give you any specifics about who is injured. I can't see anybody injured, but I mean, clearly the fact that there are, 4 ambulances now, I think I can count on the bridge itself, including a fire crew, at least one fire crew. That is the indication that they are looking after and treating people on the bridge. And then the other ambulances, the Waterloo side of the bridge, are queued up, and it looks as though they are now waiting to be brought in as and when.
Alistair, thanks very much for
that. There's a couple of buses that have been stopped on the bridge. One of the duck tours, the distinctive yellow duck tours, guide buses that go around central London, they've been stopped on the bridge as well. So it looks as though they weren't caught up in the instance as such. They were stopped from going anywhere and they were evacuated immediately.
And it's worth bearing in mind, isn't it, that actually St Thomas's Hospital, major teaching hospital, just on the south bank of the River Thames, opposite the Houses of Parliament, so medical help is literally that close. Just an apology as well, if any of our live pictures are picking out images which you may find distressing, you'll understand why we're keen to bring you a sense of what's happening there as quickly as possible. On the line now, Dr David Lowe, no, forgive me, Richard Tice, who is an eyewitness, somebody who saw part of what unfolded in Westminster this lunchtime. Richard, what did you see?
So, hi there, good afternoon. I came out of Westminster Tube, which was being locked down sort of immediately behind me, was ushered on to the bridge and looked across to the west pavement of the bridge, and literally north to south, I must have counted between 8 and 10 prostrate figures on the ground. My understanding from someone next to me was that a car or vehicle had driven along the whole pavement, knocking people over. And that's why there were many injuries, many people laying on the ground, starting to be attended to by paramedics. But literally from north to south, the whole length of the bridge, there were people on the ground who had clearly been injured by either a car or a vehicle. So pretty dramatic scenes, reports of gunshot fired and simultaneously grey and black vehicles arriving with special forces in masks and things. So pretty dramatic scenes, and hopefully people are no more than injured.
We don't know at this stage, Richard, but there are reports suggesting anything between 2 and 12 people were injured on the bridge. Which number seems close to the reality of what you saw?
I definitely counted at least 8 people, the length of the bridge, on the ground being tended to, from north to south along the whole length of the bridge. OK. Richard Tice, one of the many people who saw these events unfold in Westminster today. Thanks very much.
Just getting some more information from witnesses who described the event nearer to Parliament. This was the person carrying a knife. One witness has described seeing a middle-aged man carrying a knife and running. This is coming from the Press Association. Described as an Asian guy in about his 40s carrying a knife about 7 or 8 inches long, running through those gates towards Parliament, being chased by police.
Well, look, if you are just switching on, this might be an appropriate moment just to draw breath and recap on what's happened. Around about 30 minutes ago, first reports came in initially of loud bangs, 4 loud bangs in the Westminster area. Shortly thereafter, we learned that Parliament had been suspended and was in a state of lockdown. You can still see at the bottom of the frame of that picture that you're looking at, which is overlooking Parliament Square, the statue of Winston Churchill and all the rest of it. You can see parked up there the Air Ambulance, which arrived pretty smartly. There's another picture showing from a different orientation that Air Ambulance on the ground, some of the police vehicles. Parliament Square now by this stage cleared of both traffic and the thousands of tourists and others who would ordinarily be there. The underground station, coincidentally, as you look towards it, now also closed, not because we believe of any particular terror threat there, but simply as a matter of procedure.
Also, this incident, as the camera pans along Westminster Bridge, that is also the scene of part of this incident. We just heard Richard Tice, their eyewitness, describing how he saw a number of people, some 8 to 10 people lying on the ground along that bridge, Westminster Bridge, busy at any time with people taking photographs of Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament. He said he believed that perhaps a vehicle had driven along the pavement of that bridge. Some speculation that could be the vehicle that then continued onto Parliament and carried the person with the knife. You can see the emergency services, many of them on that bridge now attending to those people. Let's cross to our correspondent Robert Nisbet, who's on the scene.
So we are on Millbank at the moment, Colin and Jane, and we are being pushed back again. They are expanding the radius of this area, this antiseptic area, as they continue their investigation and try to get as many emergency vehicles into the area as possible. We can see as we walk alongside here, and we're walking parallel to the Thames, we can see Westminster Bridge and all of the double-decker buses that are along there, obviously stop still. In between those double-decker buses, you can see the pulse of blue flashing lights as more emergency vehicles now race down Millbank and through the tape to get there as quickly as possible. Just a quick recap of how we heard about it, and to give you a little spot of geography here. Millbank is this connective road that links the offices to the Houses of Parliament here. Most of the journalists are housed along here, and we were alerted to the fact that something was happening by a single tweet from one journalist. Everybody came running out, as you can imagine, into a scene of chaos, of people running in the opposite direction as police were trying to force people, expel them as quickly as possible out of the area, including dozens of workers who were working on the road around Parliament Square. Then, as they were starting to pull the plastic tape across to keep the area safe, we started hearing the blades of a helicopter, and we saw a red air ambulance land in Parliament Square just as the first information was coming out of what had occurred on Westminster Bridge. And we seem to be getting two lots of information from people who were on the bridge, where it appears that car was mounting the pavement and trying to mow people down, and then also from journalists who were inside Parliament at the time, who saw the attack, as we understand it, on a policeman by the knifeman, who was then shot dead. Now you see the chaotic aftermath of an event such as this, with tourists just wandering around here looking fairly bemused, as you can see, as police try to seal off the area, and the press now being pushed right back to Vauxhall Bridge, trying to keep this area as clear as possible, presumably to allow those emergency vehicles and police crews to get in there as quickly and as safely as possible. I'll throw it back to you now. I don't have communications with the studio.
Robert, thanks very much. Just want to stress at this point that there is a huge amount of material that's coming in. You can imagine this is an area that is an absolute media hub. Lots of people with mobile phones capable of taking pictures, journalists, holidaymakers, commuters, office workers, civil servants, all the rest of it. Some of it is, I think, reasonable to say, distressing. And I want to warn you about the picture we're about to show you. But we think it may help tell part of a story that's emerging. This is a still image simply showing somebody prostrate on the ground before medical attention has reached them. We've partly blurred the image, but we think it may help explain at least part of what's been happening on Westminster Bridge itself. River Thames just at the top of the frame as you see it, and that, if memory serves, is part of Westminster Bridge just as it abuts the Palace of Westminster complex itself. Now, whether that's an individual who's been hit by a fast-moving vehicle, then flipped over the wall, perhaps somebody who was seeking simply to jump out of the way of a fast-moving vehicle, but an image taken in the moments before the emergency services arrive. They are now there in great numbers.
If you're just joining us here on Sky News, there has been a serious incident outside the Houses of Parliament in London. Our correspondent David Bowden is here with us in the studio. David, just remind us of the facts as we know them now.
Well, we have what appear to be two separate incidents, but we have from a contact of Mark White, our Home Affairs correspondent, an official source saying that the two incidents are probably linked because it looks as though a man described again as a middle-aged man armed with a knife some 7 or 8 inches long, it appears drove a four-wheel drive vehicle across Westminster Bridge, mounted the pavement, ploughed into a number of people. Another witness told us anywhere between 8 and 10 people that he had seen lying on the ground, injured, then drove the same vehicle, we now believe, into the railings of the Palace of Westminster, which is literally just round the corner, and attempted to get into the actual grounds of the Palace of Westminster itself. There, he was stopped by police officers. He stabbed a police officer, and then he himself was shot and is now injured. Both the police officer who was knifed by this man is being attended to by paramedics, as is the assailant who was shot by other police officers. Now, whether or not this is the timeline as it unfolded, or whether or not, as we heard from another witness, there was potentially two separate events, and one of the men who was driving this vehicle got out and attempted to run away, and was fired at by police. They may well, in fact, be the same person. They may be two separate individuals. If they're the same person, it looks as though this situation is now contained because that person is injured, has been shot, and is being tended to by paramedics. If there were two people, then potentially a second person is still out there on the run. But I stress this is unfolding as we speak. Clearly, it is a major incident. Clearly, a number of people have been injured at the very least. And again, we get this idea, if it does turn out to be a terror attack, that essentially low-tech can become very high impact, as happened, of course, in both Nice and Berlin, in other places.
David Bowden, in terms of what's happening in Parliament, we know that Parliament has now been suspended for the day. We also know that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are both safe. We believe that the Prime Minister was in the Houses of Parliament when it happened.
We can talk to a Conservative backbencher who I think saw the Prime Minister being taken away. Of course, Prime Minister's questions, packed chamber, 4 p.m. queues. Andrew Bridgen, MP, joins us now. Andrew Bridgen, welcome to you. What did you see?
Well, we were just on a division, so a vote on the Lord's amendments to the Pensions Bill, the first of a series of votes. I was actually very close to going through the lobby voting just behind the Prime Minister, and the first I realised something was happening was when her security detail, we knew we had a series of votes, just came and spoke to the Prime Minister, and she moved away very quickly. She was taken to her car in Speaker's Courtyard, and then the security detail got their automatic weapons out and then moved off and took the Prime Minister out of Parliament via the House of Lords end.
Andrew, what was her reaction? What was the demeanour of the officers? Was it done in a calm way? Was there a sense in which this was frenetic, working to a plan? What was the feeling that you got?
They were professional, but it was obvious from their demeanour that this was not a drill and something serious had happened. I've never seen the Prime Minister moved away by the biggest security, plainclothes security policeman I've ever seen. Put his arm around her and took her very, very quickly away. And we could see that she was taken to her car. Automatic weapons were produced by the security detail, and she was very, very rapidly moved to safety, away from the incident. We're currently all on lockdown now in the House of Commons, and I believe that security are going through and just trying to check to make sure there's no other assailants.
And when we talk about being under lockdown, Andrew Bridgen, what are MPs and peers doing? Are they simply waiting in their offices? They've left the chamber. What's going on?
I think everyone's actually... Well, we've actually been insulated from it effectively inside the chamber. I think everyone's just gathered around TV screens waiting to actually get an idea of actually what was going on outside, which I think is sort of... We're getting an idea of that now, aren't we?
We are. And just to reinforce this point...
Obviously, our thoughts are really with the police officer who appears to have been injured, and it just shows what an important and potentially dangerous job that they do protecting our Parliament and our democracy.
Indeed. Andrew Bridgen, could you just give us a sense of the significance of Parliament being suspended? I mean, clearly it was a necessary precaution given what we understand was happening outside, but sum it up for us if you can.
Well, I think as a parliamentarian, we know that this is a high-risk environment, that it's a clear potential terrorist target for various groups. And even knowing that and coming to work every day and seeing the security, it's still a bit numbing when it actually happens. It is slightly surreal here in Parliament at the moment. I mean, it's not unexpected. It's almost an inevitability that someone will try something like this against our Parliament, the mother of all parliaments, but it is still quite surreal when it's actually happening.
Andrew Bridgen, MP, thanks very much.
Well, more information coming in all the time. We're seeing some images coming to us from MPs who are inside Portcullis House, which is a building which overlooks Westminster Bridge. It's a building where a lot of the MPs have their offices and they walk from Portcullis House across the road to Westminster Bridge, the route that this vehicle does appear to have taken. You can see there an aerial view of Westminster Bridge where the ambulance services are attending to a number of people who appear to have been mown down on that bridge by a vehicle which it is believed then continued on on to Parliament. Let's just remind ourselves of what happened in the last hour as Parliament was suspended as this gunfire was heard.
It's clear that the advice from the police and the Director of Security is still that the chamber should remain in lockdown. I think, as most colleagues will realise, a number of Right Honourable and Honourable members are also in other parts of the estate or off the estate, and for obvious reasons are unable to be present for business. Having had, there have been conversations through the usual channels. I hope the House would agree that in the current circumstances it would not be right to continue with today's business. Discussions between the usual channels will take place to ensure that the business that has been interrupted can be rescheduled for another mutually convenient date. And I know, Mr Deputy Speaker, that you will want to keep the House, although we remain locked down here, informed about any news that comes through from the security authorities. But in view of what I sense to be the mood of the House and the situation in which we find ourselves, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is, this House do now adjourn. As many of the other opinions say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. What I would go on to say is, as the moment I get any information, I will share it with everybody. I'm waiting for that, any more information to come through. Just to rest assured, we'll keep you informed what advice we're going to give as well. So please, let's just make the best we can of this horrible situation. But I will reassure you, as soon as I get something, I will come back to you. We can't go anywhere for the moment, so please, just let's see what we can do.
Well, let's bring in our Home Affairs correspondent, Mark White, who is in Westminster for us. Mark, in terms of what's happening in the House of Commons at the moment, we know that the Prime Minister was there, that she was taken away quickly, she is safe. The Press Association are reporting that the police are going through the Houses of Parliament floor by floor.
Yes, I mean, that's a standard protocol when you're dealing with an incident like this that on the face of it appears to look like a terrorist incident that is unfolding outside Westminster and indeed within the palaces of Westminster. So the police absolutely have to check out this area. They have to put in a sterile cordon around the area and make sure that there are no other people who may be linked to the attack, and by that I mean no other attackers. The information that I've just been speaking to a source again, so the information that that they now have, their working assumption is this is one incident, but it has been broken down into three component parts. First of all, a vehicle that has mounted the pavement on Westminster Bridge and collided with a number of pedestrians on that bridge. Now, of course, we've seen from our helicopter aerials those user-generated videos as well of people clearly injured. Some reports suggesting up to a dozen people potentially on Westminster Bridge. I've just been told by this source of multiple casualties and no definitive number put on that. But the next element of this unfolding incident was the vehicle involved in the attack on the bridge careered down into Parliament Square and then smashed into the railings at the front of the Houses of Parliament. And in doing that, I understand that there are further casualties on the pavement there just by the railings at Westminster Bridge. Now, the information that our source has is that the attacker, one attacker at this moment that we know of, left the vehicle, confronted police officers, managed to get in to the Old Palace Yard at Westminster, just beyond the main gates there, where you often see the Prime Minister's convoy going in and out. Into the Old Palace Yard was then confronted by a police officer there. We understand that a police officer has been stabbed, confirmed by our source, and that colleagues of that officer opened fire and shot the attacker. Now, at this stage, we're just told that both the police officer and the attacker have been injured, and no further details on that. But again, images that we've seen from the area within the Old Palace Yard indicate a couple of people within there, one lying on the ground, one sitting up, and both being treated by paramedics at the scene. So we're talking about one incident from the information that we're getting from this source, but in three component parts: the mowing down of people on Westminster Bridge, the vehicle then speeding down into Parliament Square and crashing into the fence, the metal fence outside the Houses of Parliament, causing, we're told, some more casualties there. And then the incident inside where one alleged attacker left the vehicle armed with a knife, headed into the Old Palace Yard, confronted by police officers, attacked and stabbed one of those officers, and then was shot by colleagues of that injured officer.
Mark, thanks very much.
Well, if you are just switching on, we'll try and recap some of the latest developments on this story. The police are now saying that they are treating this attack as a terrorist incident until, quote, we know otherwise. That's the latest from the Metropolitan Police. Robert Nisbet, our correspondent in Westminster, can join us now with a view from where he is. Robert.
Well, Colin, as you would imagine, a huge amount of police activity. We're at the end of Lambeth Bridge. We're standing on Millbank, which leads down to the Palace of Westminster down there. We've also got a pretty good view of Westminster Bridge, and we can see there all of the double-decker buses that are obviously now stationary, in between them flashing lights visible there. What the police are trying to do here now is obviously get to the scene as quickly as possible, as well as remove people from the scene as well. There are still some obviously quite shocked people stumbling around, not quite sure what is going on, some of them clearly tourists, but also a lot of reporters around here as well. A number of them, including Sky News, based just a little bit further down Millbank, and we heard very swiftly about what had happened and came running out to be confronted by the scene of people running away from Parliament up Millbank towards the bridge here. We also, just a few minutes after we came out of the building, saw a silver Jaguar move at speed away from the Parliament and then down Great Peter Street, just down by the side, just off Westminster. We now believe that the Prime Minister Theresa May well have been inside of that car, and this was her speedy evacuation from the scene. So now what is happening? I mean, to add to what Mark has been saying there, that obviously there is the immediate response to treat those people that are still lying injured at those various pressure points. So on the bridge where the car apparently mounted the pavement, but also at that railing where the car crashed into the railing, as well as in Old Palace Yard itself. So there is the treatment of those people, but also there is an attempt now to gather evidence and just try to piece together what happened. And to that end, they want as many of us, reporters with cameras, as far away as possible as they carry out their work. But there are still people inside these buildings along here, along Millbank, who are trapped inside. They have been told that they can't come out. And so therefore this is still very much, of course, an active crime scene as they try to piece together what has happened. We did just see within the last few minutes, Colin, an ambulance that came past here with police, a police escort at the front and at the back, and there is speculation among some of us here at the press as it was going past whether that potentially was the attacker or perhaps someone involved in it, because those police were clearly guarding the ambulance as it left the scene. So as we hear sirens coming from almost every direction, it seems, still obviously an ongoing situation now. There's a fire engine that's coming down through here. That's the first one we've seen of those, but obviously considerable activity from ambulance and police cars as well.
Robert, for now, we'll say thank you.
A couple of updates we can bring you on this story, reaction coming into it from across the world, and Sean Spicer, President Trump's press officer, has announced that the President has been briefed on the situation in the UK and is continuing to monitor and be updated on the situation. In terms of the number of emergency services that we are seeing, there the air ambulance parked on Parliament Square opposite the Houses of Parliament. We've also seen a number of ambulances on Westminster Bridge. London Ambulance Service is asking people in the area, please only call for an ambulance in a genuine emergency. It is using a great number of resources in the centre of London at the moment. We
can talk to our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, who's in Westminster now. Mark, There is a working theory as to what's happened here, but obviously, I'm just seeing, for instance, that the police presence at the end of Downing Street's been beefed up. Obviously, the authorities are working to a plan based on the idea they do not know yet whether this is completely finished.
Well, of course, they know from past terrorist incidents, and at the moment Scotland Yard have confirmed this is being treated as a terrorist incident until they know otherwise. But they know the pattern with many other terrorist incidents that we've seen in the past, including, of course, London in 7/7, and again a couple of weeks later on the 21st of July 2005, where you had multiple incidents that unfolded. Now, it may be that this is just a single incident and that's where it stands, but the police will, of course, take no chances, and that's why you're seeing, especially around central London, crowded areas now, an enhanced police presence to make sure that they can do as much as possible to be there should the worst happen. Now, I can confirm to you, Colin, from a source that counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers have now arrived on scene. Now, these CTSFOs, as they're called, are the elite of the SCO-19 firearms unit. They are specifically trained to deal in countering terrorism incidents. Just on Sunday, I was down on the River Thames at an exercise that the counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers were involved in. There, the scenario was boarding one of these riverboat pleasure cruisers with apparently the scenario was hostages on board. They train for this regularly. Clearly, they have been dispatched to the scene. What they are doing at the moment is helping in this area search of the Houses of Parliament. So you could see, of course, there from the images, that is one of the HeliMed helicopters that was down there on the Green in Parliament Square, which is just lifted off with one of the injured. Now, what we don't know at this stage, we know, of course, that both the alleged attacker and the policeman were being treated at the scene. It may be that one or other, or indeed both of them, could be on board that helicopter, but also we're hearing reports, of course, of multiple injured on Westminster Bridge. Now, if you're talking about very seriously injured people, they may have medevaced them by helicopter as well. One of the good points in terms of geographically, as you mentioned before, Colin, you have got St Thomas's Hospital just across the River Thames there. It is a major trauma unit and well able to deal with an incident like this, but it is an incident that's still unfolding in terms of casualties. You are still seeing injured being treated at the scene by members of the emergency services, paramedics, fire officers. You can see at the scene there as well, and many police now taking up positions to guard. As I was saying, these counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers are taking part, we understand, in a systematic search of the Houses of Parliament, because although we believe from the reports that we're getting, and certainly from what a senior source was able to tell me, that there was one attacker, they can't take the chance that there was just one attacker. These incidents, by their very nature, are fast-moving and very chaotic. It's possible that there may be other people, and that's why you've got this systematic search now of the Houses of Parliament with these counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers and other firearms officers, armed response vehicle officers. They're all being brought in now to the centre of London to help out in what will be a major search. And unfortunately, until they deem that Rabbit Warren, which are the palaces of Westminster, the rooms within the palaces of Westminster, are fully checked, many of the offices within that building will remain on lockdown, and that may mean MPs, members of the Lords, other offices having to remain in situ until they are eventually allowed to go. But I'm sure people will be very understanding that this incident is unfolding here.
White for now. Thanks very much, Mark.
Well, we've got a lot of people down on the ground there. Let's talk to Alistair Bunkle, who is very close to Westminster Bridge, where there are a number of people still receiving medical treatment. We can see from our aerial pictures, Alistair. What are you able to tell us?
Yeah, I should say, Jane, just as you come to me, they look as though they might be extending the cordon, so bear with us if we do have to leave you or they move us. But I'm going to bring in Finn here, who's a student who lives in halls of residence nearby. Now, you didn't actually see the incident itself, but you were on the scene minutes afterwards, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. I live in the student accommodation about 100 metres away from the south side of Westminster Bridge. I walked out to go to university, and I think someone my age came out to me and said there's been a terrorist attack on the bridge. And so I ran over and I walked up to the bridge, so I wanted to know what had happened, and unfortunately, the scenes were pretty terrible.
Can you, within the bounds of decency, tell us what you did see?
I saw 3 to 4 people, roughly, who had been hit by a car and some car parts on the road and stuff.
You're pretty sure they'd been hit by a car?
Yes, yeah, that was the conclusion that I made, based on what I'd spoken to people there as well. People were talking. There was a man who works at a souvenir shop, and he...
OK, look, Finn, I'm just going to stay with...
Sounds like the sound disappearing from Alistair Bunkle's camera. This might be an opportune moment to recap what's happened so far and what we can officially say, and also let you know what other people are saying too. It was 18 minutes to 3 o'clock on the day of Prime Minister's questions. The Prime Minister was still in the Houses of Parliament when first reports came through of a number of loud bangs in the Westminster area. As we've been reporting since then, the police have drawn the conclusion, or at least they're saying tentatively, that it has the makings, what then unfolded, of a terrorist attack. They are not confirming that at this stage. Parliament was quickly suspended, as we've been told a few moments ago. Now a painstaking process involving dozens of armed police officers is underway to make sure that Parliament itself, currently on lockdown with MPs and peers confined to that building, is currently underway. Every single room, we're told, will be searched as a matter of caution at this stage. There's been an air ambulance on Parliament Square itself. The underground station at Westminster has been closed. Again, we believe, as part of a procedure that's been adhered to at a time like this, rather than acting in response to any particular terror event at Westminster Station. The Prime Minister, we heard from one Tory backbencher, Andrew Bridgen, who saw the Prime Minister in the lobbies, voting in the lobbies, and then been approached by initially plainclothes officers who ushered her away with their guns at the ready. We understand she's entirely safe and probably, though we're not sure, back at Downing Street, which has seen the number of guards at the end of Downing Street increase substantially too.
You're seeing the pictures at the moment of Westminster Bridge, where we do believe there are a number of people who were injured who are still on the bridge. The emergency services are there. It is very, very close to St Thomas's Hospital, just the other side of the bridge. Mercifully, emergency services were able to get to the scene very, very quickly, but you can see that there is still a great deal of activity there. Police have closed this entire area now, asking people to avoid the entire area. Ambulance service are also saying people, please do not phone an ambulance in central London unless it really is a genuine emergency. Our correspondent Robert Nisbet was one of the first on the scene down there this afternoon. Robert, what can you see now?
Well, now, Jane, as you can tell here, we are being kept at some distance. Every now and again we hear this as the police try to move the cameras and the journalists out the way for another emergency vehicle to come on through. Of course, what you have here, Jane, just to anybody who doesn't know the geography of where we are in London, is that this is a considerably busy place, not just for the business of Parliament, but also a number of tourists come on through. You see the communication here between some of the police officers as another ambulance goes behind us here. But a number of tourists in the area, as well as thousands, of course, of office workers who work here. There were also just a bunch of school children who were looking completely bemused at the end of this road. They wanted to get down here to catch their bus, but they were being pushed back the other way. And, of course, now that all of this area is being sealed off, you're getting the pushback, and traffic now, of course, is building up in all of these nodal points alongside the River Thames. But there is still that crisp edge you can feel at times like this, which I felt in Paris at both the terrorist attacks I covered, that all the police, all the emergency services are just tense. And everybody around them, of course, that tension is radiating out as they try to keep this area clear for emergency vehicles to come in. We've seen a number of ambulances come out and a number of police vehicles come in. And within the last 15 minutes or so, we saw one ambulance, as I was mentioning earlier, with a police escort either side, and there's been some speculation here as to whether that potentially was that ambulance contained perhaps someone of interest there. Another helicopter directly above us, that may well be one of the crews that is catching the images of what is happening on the bridges beneath us as well. So obviously a huge amount of activity here as the police try to establish what has happened, keep the area secure, and also get those injured people in and out, as well as, of course, conducting the initial stages of an investigation to try to piece together what has happened.
Robert, thanks very much. As you're speaking to us, more and more images are coming into us. The Metropolitan Police are asking if anybody has footage of the incidents, please pass it on to them. A great deal is circulating on social media as well, though.
We are sifting through them, and we are as judiciously as is possible, while telling you clearly a very dramatic story, aware of obvious sensitivities at a time like this. So here is a number of the pictures amidst the many that are currently circulating, which give you a sense of what has happened this lunchtime on Westminster Bridge, as we believe a 4x4 car has been driven at speed along the pavement heading towards the Palace of Westminster, where it then crashed into the gates. If you know that area, in fact, just the previous picture, if you know the area, you'll know there are huge concrete blocks designed to stop any vehicle actually mounting the pavement. It's our understanding that it's gone along the pavement, according to Eyewitness reports and our sources, quoted by Mark White, our Home Affairs editor, that it's then carried on down Westminster Bridge towards Big Ben and then gone round, we imagine, some of those concrete blocks and crashed into the gate. So a number of people clearly receiving ad hoc medical attention. This is very close to St Thomas's Hospital, a major accident emergency unit just metres away from where all this was unfolding. In fact, let me share with you a statement from London Ambulance Service Deputy Director of Operations, Pauline Cramner, who has said, "We were called at 2:40 p.m. to Westminster Bridge to reports of an incident with the first crew arriving within 6 minutes," underlining the point we're making. We have sent a number of resources to the scene, including ambulance crews, London's Air Ambulance and our hazardous area response team. We're working closely with other members of the emergency services at the scene, with our priority being to ensure patients receive the medical help they need as quickly as possible. We have declared a major incident, and our priority is to assess patients and ensure that they are treated and taken to hospital as soon as possible. Closes by saying we are very busy dealing with this incident. We would ask the public to only call us in a genuine emergency.
There is another image that we can show you. I should warn you that it may be distressing to some viewers, but it is somebody who's clearly affected by what happened this afternoon. We believe these are the steps. You can see the River Thames just to the top left of the screen there. This very much looks like somebody who was on Westminster Bridge. Whether or not they were hit by a car and perhaps thrown over or fell down the steps, we don't know, but this is somebody who was affected earlier before medical treatment arrived. This is the latest footage we can bring you live in Westminster of what is happening there on the ground. Huge number of emergency services there on the ground at the moment. The area being evacuated, the tube not running in that area as well. The tube station's been closed. Police asking people to stay away and trying to clear that area as effectively as they can.
Well, as we continue to look at these pictures, let's go back to our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, who can reflect, Mark, if it's not too early to do so, on the fact that this is one of the most sensitive in terms of the terror threat locations pretty much in the world, and all necessary precautions had been taken to prevent a range of different types of attack.
Yes, the police regularly tell us, and we report regularly, on the threat that's facing the UK. The terror threat currently stands at its second highest level. That is severe, meaning an attack is highly likely. The highest level is critical, which means that effectively an attack is underway. We haven't heard from the Home Office as yet as to whether that threat level is likely to rise or whether they think this may be just a one-off and it can stay at severe. But in those briefings that we get regularly, they stress, and we're almost weary at times of the constant stressing of the security services about the threat that we face. And there is a sense, because there have been no incidents really of any significance since really the attack on Lee Rigby a few years back, when he was killed outside the barracks in Woolwich, that the police and security services are on top of everything. And to a large extent, they are. They've thwarted 13 terrorist attacks in this country in the past 4 years. But they also stress constantly that it only takes one incident, one person that they might not be across who can launch these fairly unsophisticated attacks. They can be horrific, as clearly we are seeing by the nature of what is unfolding here. But in terms of the technology and the plotting and planning that's involved, they are fairly low in sophistication. All you need is a car and a knife. Anybody can go into their own kitchen and pick up a lethal knife. So it's very difficult at times to guard against an individual that might want to cause such destruction and chaos in the centre of a busy city if they're so minded to do that. They do monitor, and they are aware of about 3,000 individuals in this country who have the kind of extremist views that they may well enact that out in violence. But they have to make judgment calls all of the time. They have to prioritise about who they should devote a lot of time to in terms of monitoring. They just don't have the resources to monitor everybody all of the time. And sometimes those judgment calls mean that an individual that's known to them might not be monitored properly, or it may be an individual who's not known to them. We will find out that kind of information in the days ahead. What we are now witnessing is very much an unfolding incident that Scotland Yard have confirmed they are treating as a terrorist incident outside the Houses of Parliament and indeed inside the grounds of the Houses of Parliament. It might be worth, Colin, just confirming to you what my source, senior security source, has told me this afternoon in terms of the events. It happened, first of all, on Westminster Bridge with a vehicle that ploughed into a number of pedestrians who were on that bridge for a considerable way, if not most of the way across Westminster Bridge. That vehicle had mounted the pavement and smashed into a number of pedestrians who are being treated, some of them still being treated and triaged on the bridge by paramedics and other members of the emergency services. The vehicle, a 4x4 Hyundai, we understand, then at speed came into Parliament Square and then crashed into the perimeter fence around the Houses of Parliament. Now, at that point, we're told it caused more injuries to people who were on the pavement at just outside the palaces of Westminster. Now, at this stage, we're told they believe there was one attacker. That alleged attacker left the vehicle armed with a knife, managed to wrestle his way through police officers and into Old Palace Yard, just beyond the main gates into the palaces of Westminster. He was tackled by a police officer who then sustained knife injuries. And then one of that police officer's colleagues, a member, we're told, of the Diplomatic Protection Group, who are tasked with guarding the palaces of Westminster and who are armed, that officer shot this attacker multiple times. Now, at this stage, we've been told that both the police officer and the alleged attacker are injured. We've no more information on the extent of their injuries, but they, again, have been treated at the scene. Within the last few minutes, we saw a HeliMed helicopter leave the grounds of Parliament Square, presumably heading to one of the major trauma units, maybe St Thomas's Hospital, just on the other side of the river. Other injured are being taken by these road ambulances that are now there in significant numbers. London Ambulance Service have described this as a major incident.
OK, for now, Mark will say thank you. And just to underline what Mark was saying there about his working theory that we're talking about somebody with a vehicle and a knife who is able to generate headlines around the world, the US State Department in Washington says it is closely following the, quote, concerning situation outside the UK Parliament.
Let's talk to Adam Holloway, MP, who is inside the Houses of Parliament, which has been on lockdown since this incident happened 18 minutes to 3 this afternoon. What was the first you knew of it, Mr Holloway?
I beg your pardon?
What was the first you knew of it?
The first I knew of it, I was going to vote, and the parliamentary police very rarely shout. They were shouting to people to come down an escalator. As I got to the bottom of the escalator, a wave of people were running towards me. So I obviously returned to my office, to my staff, and we're now in Norman Shore South. We're all thinking of the injured people and marvelling at the police and ambulance service response and staying in our offices with the doors shut.
How fearful are you? The police are obviously inside, they're searching the building.
We're not fearful at all. We've got every confidence in the police. We're watching Sky News and they seem to be doing extremely well.
The fact that this person appeared to be able to get inside the perimeter of the Palace of Westminster is concerning, though, is it not? We look at the safety procedures that are in place in Westminster, the bollards that are on the road just outside the building. It will raise questions as to how on earth this was able to happen.
You know, it's very difficult when you live in a democracy and you have a place where, you know, thousands and thousands of people work, move in and out of every day to secure absolutely everything. I mean, you know, there are obvious things that can always be improved, but it's a balance between, you know, access and security. And, you know, let's be fair to the cops. I mean, that was a pretty impressive response by them, given that they didn't know that was coming.
In terms of security at Westminster, to those who don't know, just talk us through what kind of security you have to go through on a daily basis.
You know, I just think that kind of thing is pretty unhelpful to discuss on, you know, satellite TV.
OK, fair enough. But what I'm trying to get at is that there is an exhaustive security procedure, is there not? It's certainly a well thought through process.
Oh, yeah, I think it is. I mean, you know,
Landed in the middle of the road. Then I had to stop and then stop the other vehicles.
And did you get a view of the driver at all?
No, because as we were just passing here, the driver overtook me straight away.
Yeah.
So I don't know who was in that car.
You said he saw the lights. Were the lights on red when he first?
No, the light was red at the beginning, so I had to slow down to wait the light.
Yeah.
As soon as the light changed to the amber, the car started speeding up straight away.
Yeah.
30 miles an hour between here and the traffic light. You cannot drive at 30 miles an hour.
Yes.
Then straight away went to the kiosk and there was people on the first bridge. And the second one in the middle bridge, there's a sign in there. And the third one is by the yellow board. So there is a man just laying down there.
So how many people do you think he hit? Or did you see him hit?
What I have seen it on my own eyes, between 6 and 7 people laying down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were they on the pavement when he was zigzagging into them?
They were just walking as normal, and the first hit, even the second people and the third time he was doing, no one realised it. So as he's done it in and out, zigzag.
Yeah.
And it was a quick and less than 10 seconds between.
Yeah. And then what happened to the car? Did he just carry on then over Westminster Bridge?
The car continued to drive all the way down, but on the bottom of the bridge there is a 2-lane, so there is a bus on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
So it just continued between the bus and the pavement, and there was over 100 people on the pavement. Just like we're standing here now.
Yeah.
The car drive to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then anything can happen. I don't know if people landed on the river. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the traffic was even slow moving. I don't know if the cars and hit other people while they're running away from this car. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can do is just stop at the middle of the bridge and try to stop the vehicle coming, and then try to assist them and call the police and ambulance.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can do.
And how badly injured was the person that you saw?
And to be honest, the one I have seen, there is one person who wasn't moving at all.
Yeah.
And the only thing I heard from the ambulance and all that is a conscious. I don't know after that.
And did I hear you say that was a man?
I think it's a man that was laying down on the floor.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's passed away or, but the ambulance they were saying he's conscious and can we take it? So I don't know what happened after that.
Do you know what was the man's approximate age? Was he?
No, I have no idea because I cannot focus in that one.
No.
The only thing I can focus is my behind, so the vehicles not to cross it.
Yes.
So that's the only thing I can assist it, and I'm only one person. But luckily, within a minute or two, so then the first ambulance and the police started running. Yeah.
Were they quite quick on the scene?
We started because the first thing we panicked all of it. We didn't know exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
Then when I went to call to 99, usually you always get the answer.
Yeah.
So I had to wait about 30 seconds to be diverted, either the police or ambulance. Mm-hmm. Then after that, then I've been told yes, we know, and then there is police coming, ambulance coming. But literally within 2 minutes, they started rolling.
Yeah. And again, I mean, what's your reaction to all this? I mean, you said you were sickened. I mean,
up to now, inside, outside, I'm feeling sick and I don't know what's happening. And I don't know who that person is. a sick person or a terrorism. I don't know exactly who's that person, but you guys was watching the news, so you have to tell me who was the driver and what he was doing. So I cannot judge it until I listen to the news and find out the truth about that person. But at the moment, what I witnessed it is not something I wish for anybody. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you mind if I ask your age? Your name,
45.
And your name?
Ismail.
Is it ISMAILL
Yes, love.
Do you really mind just telling us what happened from the start? We just missed it.
I don't know if you want to roll it to your camera there, behind the van, the car parked there. And it's a 4x4 grey or silver. So I don't know why he parked the car there and what he was doing in the car. And then as I was waiting that green light to change, the car speeded up and passed me that small shop after the traffic light. That's the first victim hit. Then I did not pay attention. I thought it was just only car swerved it. Second, after a few meters, and the third, then that's the time of collecting me on something bad is going on. They continue, but I don't know by the end of the bridge, I don't know what's happening. But there is a lot of people was on the pavement, and the car went straight.
How did it feel the moment when you saw this happen?
As soon as I notice something is going wrong, the only thing I can focus on, not them one, the only one in front of me. So then there is traffic was rolling, so I had to stop the traffic to focus that person on the floor. And then after that, then we have to panic and then try to call the police and ambulance and everything. Try to assist the people on the floor. There was people get away with it, they get harm. So then we had tried to help everyone in there, and then we have to call the police and ambulance. I hope everyone is okay. That's the only thing is, but it's something it's not a wish for anybody. Yeah. Good luck to you.
And then a medic arrived on a bike, and then ambulances arrived fairly quickly after that, and then the police started pouring onto the bridge, and at that point we walked people off the bridge and they put a tape around it.
Did you hear noises that sounded like gunshots?
I didn't know. I heard afterwards, I've heard people say that. I didn't hear that. I just heard the screaming.
And a little bit about yourself. Do you work here? Why were you in London?
No, I live in Wales and Somerset, and my daughter works here, and I've just come up to see a show with her tonight. And I was just kind of walking around.
And a mix of people on the bridge, people like you, people who work there, tourists.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really busy. In fact, I had to step off the bridge to get round a group of people who were coming towards me, and it was just after that when all the screaming started.
And how quickly did you see the emergency services respond?
There was kind of a lull. Obviously, I could see people were phoning them. And so until they arrived, we just tried to keep people away from the scene, and then they probably arrived within 5 or 10 minutes. And when they arrived in force, and they very quickly at that point, by the time I reached the end of the bridge, they'd started pulling tape across and ushering people off.
So it took over from you, trying to keep people from coming onto the bridge?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Stephen, thank you very much. Sorry to make you relive that. That sounds fairly horrendous. And it's interesting, Colin, that the people we saw who were running from the scene, it was almost like that they had competing impulses, one to film on their phones and one to run away, which is, I suppose, a sign of the times. A lot of people just holding their phones aloft, not really knowing whether to run or film. But a number of people obviously have captured the immediate aftermath of what happened, but a number of eyewitnesses clearly, who are processing what they saw, and I can be joined by another now. Excuse me, sir. Can I speak to you here? Were you near the scene when it happened?
I was with my wife near the Whitehall, and we heard 3 shots about the Parliament. And we intend to take a photo from the Parliament, so we walk through, and we see a scene with a car crashed on the Parliament and a person on the floor near the car, but I don't know what happened because I don't see directly the scene.
So that person was lying on the ground. They looked extremely injured.
Yeah. The person, I don't know what happened with her, because I don't see, but I see just a person like aside the car.
And what happened then afterwards? What was the reaction around this scene?
Afterwards, the policeman comes to the scene and isolate the area. And push the people through the garden and the Abbey, Westminster Abbey.
Right. So trying to push people back.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for your time and explaining what you saw. So obviously a number of witnesses in this case, Colin, and what they do now is speak to all of these people, try to piece together what happened from some fairly vivid eyewitness testimony and obviously some fairly awful things that these people have witnessed as we ourselves try to put together some kind of narrative as to what has happened over the past few hours.
Robert, for now, thanks very much indeed. The Press Association reporting an announcement made in Parliament said there was a suspicious package in a vehicle and the bomb squad had been called, which halted a planned evacuation of Parliament.
Now, this is the image that we have of a vehicle which has crashed outside Parliament. We don't know if this is the 4x4. This is clearly not a 4x4 vehicle. But you can see smoke coming from the bonnet of that car and people being pushed back from the gates here outside the Houses of Parliament. Other images that are coming into us now are footage of the Prime Minister. We believe this is the Prime Minister's vehicle. Let's just give you these pictures. Here we go. Leaving the Houses of Parliament earlier. She was inside the House of Commons as this happened. We don't know exactly where the Prime Minister is, but we do know that she was removed safely from the building. Lewis Goodall, our correspondent, is in Portcullis House. Let's just bring you the latest we are getting, Lewis. One woman has died and a number of others have been hurt, including some with catastrophic injuries on Westminster Bridge. This is according to a junior doctor at St Thomas's Hospital. So this is coming now from a medic at St Thomas's Hospital, confirming one woman dead, a number of others have been hurt with catastrophic injuries in the incident on Westminster Bridge.
Well, this is now, as we already knew, if it is terror-related, it's an attack which is resulting in a number of injuries and now a fatality, according to a junior doctor who's been quoted. So not an official response at this stage. Lewis Goodall, our political correspondent in Westminster, can join us now. Lewis, what do you know?
Well, as you can see, we're just outside Parliament on the Portcullis House side. There are helicopters everywhere. We know the Prime Minister was sent back to in a car as an emergency away from Parliament shortly after the incident took place. As far as we're aware, members of Parliament are still locked down inside the chamber, not least because of the news that you were just reporting there about the possibility of a suspicious package in a vehicle. On the bridge just behind me, about an hour or so ago, we had a car which mowed down, we believe, around 5 people before the attacker went straight into, attempted to get into Parliament wielding a knife, and that's when he was shot. 2 people were then, a policeman was injured in that attack, and 2 people were received medical attention, believed to be the attacker and the policeman. Obviously, we haven't seen an incident like this for a very long time, not since the attack in London in 2005, and then subsequently the Rigby murder. But as you can see, people around me with cameras, helicopters everywhere. People apparently just across from me stuck in the London Eye, stuck in the wheel. So a degree of chaos here, but police moving us further and further along as they try and secure the area.
Lewis, thanks very much. Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the opposition, tweeting to say, my statement on the ongoing incident in Westminster, our thoughts are with the victims, their friends and families. And of course that has added poignancy as we learn within the past 2 minutes that, according to one junior doctor being quoted by the Press Association at St Thomas's Hospital, of course St Thomas's Hospital so close on the other side of the River Thames from the Houses of Parliament, that at least one woman has died and other people have suffered, quote, catastrophic injuries.
You can see on your screens now, this is the latest scene down there, the emergency services on the scene on Westminster Bridge, security services outside the Houses of Parliament. We also have a number of images that are coming into us from people who witnessed what happened today. A number of them are distressing. We're showing you them here on Sky News because this is a serious incident in the centre of London, and we think it is important to show you the reality of what has happened today. This is somebody who looks to have fallen or jumped from Westminster Bridge. These are the steps leading down from the bridge down to the river. This is also footage of people being treated on the bridge. It was some 6 minutes before the ambulance service arrived, according to London Ambulance Service. One of the witnesses there say there was what he described as a lull, clearly a large number of people going to the assistance of those who were injured on Westminster Bridge, which does appear to be the place where the largest number of casualties at the moment were. Talking to a witness who was on one of the London Transport buses a little earlier, about 10 minutes ago on Sky News, she may have been mistaken. She described hearing gunshots on the bridge. She then said that they saw a car ploughing into a number of people. She described it as a car appearing to go out of control. Another witness that we spoke to just a short time ago described how he was on the bridge. He heard people screaming. He saw bodies on the bridge. He also saw a body in the water. If the car had ploughed along a pavement, it would appear that people did try to get out the way of that vehicle. The latest we are hearing from a medic at St Thomas's Hospital is that one woman has definitely died and a number of others have been hurt. And of course, we also know that there are casualties outside the Houses of Parliament, where this man that eyewitnesses say was brandishing a knife appeared to attack a police officer, and that is where the police shots were fired.
Amid those pictures we were just showing you was a still image, I think, of the Prime Minister's vehicle with a Land Rover just behind it. Significant, actually, is the fact perhaps that it was driving away from Downing Street, away from the Houses of Parliament. There is a plan, we presume, we're certain, aren't we, that would come into effect at a time like this. Mark White, our Home Affairs correspondent, has been talking us through how those plans have swung into action today. Mark, I think, can join us now to reflect on what we know so far. This already was a mass casualty event, Mark, and now a fatal one too, it seems.
Yes, that's right. I mean, in terms of that plan that you speak about, that is in action at the moment. So you have an effective lockdown within the palaces of Westminster as officers, firearms officers from the Specialist Counter-Terrorism Unit, CTSFOs, they're called, Counter-Terrorism Specialist Firearms Officers, are on scene and are conducting a systematic search, room by room, of the palaces of Westminster, out of an abundance of caution and also out of the knowledge that because of these incidents, they are chaotic and fast-moving by their very nature. And although they believe at the moment there is one attacker, there may be more, and they need to properly check out the palaces of Westminster. In addition to that, of course, they don't know whether this incident will remain a single incident or whether they could be connected incidents. We've seen in other terrorist attacks around the world that you would get multiple incidents unfolding at the same time or in close proximity to each other, both time-wise and geographically. And on that, we're told that the London Eye, that very prominent tourist attraction just across the River Thames from the palaces of Westminster, is also on lockdown at the moment as another search is carried out there. Taking you back to the palaces of Westminster, though, in terms of what's happening inside, there is also still a security alert outside with reports of a suspect package within the vehicle, that Hyundai 4x4 that crashed into the perimeter fence to the Houses of Parliament. That suspect package will need to be properly examined and made safe if there is any danger within that package itself. That will take a while. That's why we've seen the cordon at the palaces of Westminster extended regularly. You can see those officers on the right gesticulating again to that officer. I think that he wants people even further back. Clearly, if they are dealing with the potential of a suspect package, they want to make sure that all of the relevant bomb disposal teams can get there and that people are not within harm's way. So that's why they've been taken quite a bit further back down the street there. That's a good few hundred yards down from the front of the palaces of Westminster. But that's what they do. They put up these cordons, they try to make sure the area is safe, and then they conduct these room-by-room searches to ensure that there are no more attackers within the premises there.
Somebody show me a live picture, please. Hello, you are watching Sky News. If you are just joining us, there is a major terror incident here in the centre of the capital. It involves at least 2 separate incidents. You're looking at the London Eye just at the moment, and we are being told that people are trapped inside those pods on the London Eye. As you can imagine, many of the streets here around the Palace of Westminster are completely sealed off, cordoned off. We believe that several people have been injured, and my colleague Robert Nisbet, who was here when it first happened, is with me. You've heard from the medics involved.
That's right. Well, we understand now from a doctor nearby St Thomas's Hospital that 1 woman has died and several have been injured, including some with catastrophic injuries. And what the sequence of events appears to be a car driving along Westminster Bridge, mounting of pavement, seemingly hitting people. One person went over the bridge, was either knocked over the bridge or jumped to get to safety and ended up in the water. And then the car crashed into railings near the House of Commons, and there were some other very serious injuries there. We've spoken to...
Can we just take that back a little bit for people who obviously are tuning our way all the time? So there was one incident on the bridge that potentially involved a dozen people. It did look as though this vehicle had purposefully ploughed into these people who were walking across the bridge around lunchtime. He then carried on, the driver of this vehicle.
That's right. On Westminster Bridge, driving then towards Parliament Square, so the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben would have been on his left, drove down and then appeared to go into a railing, and there were some people who appeared to have been trapped or crushed by the car at that railing point. And we've heard from 2 eyewitnesses who I've spoken to in the last hour or so who say that there was a cyclist there who looked to be extremely unwell. We don't know whether that is the one fatality that has been confirmed, but obviously you can see this in your mind's eye, this trail of destruction that this car caused. Then it appears
so it was
a separate incident that we don't know whether it was a passenger in the car or the driver himself. We know the driver from 2 eyewitnesses jumped out of the car, whether it was him who then went into the Palace of Westminster and stabbed a police officer, and then after he'd done that was shot. And there are obviously UGC mobile phone video and photographs of that person lying on the ground having been shot. So
his condition unknown.
His condition unknown. But as we had been standing here, we saw an ambulance with a police escort either side. Could well have been, someone who they thought may have been involved, a police escort as it left. Also, just as we came out of Millbank, which is our office just halfway down here.
Just to give you a bit of the geography, Millbank is probably about 50 metres further down here on the left-hand side, and then just a little bit further on to the right of your image. That is where the Palace of Westminster is, the House of Lords to start with, and then the House of Commons after that.
So as we came running out of that office, we saw all these people running in the opposite direction, being pushed back by police. We had came out after those shots had been fired, but this was obviously the moment at that time that the police were just trying to expel as many people from the area as possible for their safety, but also to kind of clear the area. And then they were parted by police for a silver Jaguar, which came right round us, and Sky cameras caught the picture, and it appears to have been the Prime Minister who had been evacuated from
let's show these pictures, Neil, as we're chatting. There are some vehicles coming past us now, and the vehicle, in fact, we're just being told by an officer that they're going to stop the traffic for this vehicle. Not sure what it is. We'll keep an eye on it. Certainly heavily tooled up police officers, it would appear. And Mark White is with us. Mark, I don't know if you can see these pictures. Talk us about it.
Kay, yes, those are the CTSFOs. You can see that on the back of his body armour there, the counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers. Those are the officers, the elite of the SCO-19 armed unit at the Metropolitan Police. They are specially trained to deal with terrorist-related incidents. Now, they have been, some of those officers have been inside the Houses of Parliament. Indeed, they're still inside, Kay, carrying out a systematic search, room by room, of that building to make sure that there is no one still inside there that they believe may have been involved in the incident. Those officers, we don't know where they are relocating to at the moment, but clearly they're moving away from the Houses of Parliament. But they are trained to deal with these kind of incidents. I was just at the weekend there on the River Thames with these officers as they were practicing boarding a pleasure cruise boat in a scenario dealing with hostages there. So they regularly train for these types of incidents, and the fact that they've been brought in underlines the seriousness of what has already been described as a major incident by London Ambulance Service, with one woman dead, a number of other people, we're told, with catastrophic injuries.
OK, for now, thanks very much indeed, Mark. We're just going to look at some images, I think, with Jane and also with Colin, as there's more police activity here at the scene, about 100 metres or so away from where one of those terrorist incidents happened. What are you showing to us, Colin and Jane?
Kay, we're trying to pick out as judiciously as possible what's appropriate to use. As you could imagine, many of our viewers could imagine too, the internet in particular awash with images. This is not just the political and media hub of London, but just a place where hundreds of holidaymakers, many of them, of course, equipped with mobile phones with cameras, would be right now. So there are a great number of pictures in circulation right now. We're trying to sift through those pictures in such a way that we can show you what was clearly a dynamic and dramatic unfolding situation on Westminster Bridge, whilst respecting the usual proprieties as well. So we're trying to strike a balance, and I hope you'll appreciate that we've sought to do that. If you are of a disposition that might find them objectionable, this might be the appropriate moment to look away for a couple of minutes as we take you through these. This, a particularly disturbing image showing somebody who may have leapt over the wall or been hit over the wall. That's the Thames. The river itself, just at the top of that picture. This is, if you know the area, this is that part of Westminster Bridge that effectively is adjacent to the Palace of Westminster itself, almost built into the foundations of the Palace of Westminster. This on the bridge itself, by this time, and we are showing images before the paramedics start to arrive, at this stage they have St Thomas's Hospital, teaching hospital, major accident emergency unit, literally within metres of the Palace of Westminster, and some of those A&E paramedics, they could almost run. They could almost run from A&E. They wouldn't need to get in their ambulances, though of course they are there in profusion, as you'd expect as well. Let's show you some more images which have been sent in to us and which we've gone through as well. Let's show you instead the live pictures we can show you now, showing a much quieter scene, in a sense, from Westminster Bridge. The tube station has been closed. As Kay was saying a few moments ago, the London Eye is locked down as well, with people still effectively trapped inside some of those pods.
Lost comms? Lost comms? Yeah.
So let's just remind you what has happened in Westminster if you're just joining us here on Sky News today. We are hearing that at least one person has died, a woman has died, and a number of others have been catastrophic injuries, according to a medic at St Thomas's Hospital. It was just after 2:30 this afternoon when a vehicle ran along Westminster Bridge. Some reports say it mounted the pavement. A number of people were hit. We have had one eyewitness who described seeing a body in the River Thames below. We have just shown you some distressing images, including somebody who appears to have either fallen or jumped from the bridge as well. So a number of injuries, and one woman died, we believe, on Westminster Bridge. That vehicle then, it is thought, continued into Parliament Square, where the Houses of Parliament and the House of Lords are situated, past Portcullis House, where MPs have their offices. It crashed into the railings outside Portcullis House. Other eyewitnesses say that they saw a man leave the vehicle armed with what appeared to be a knife, enter the perimeter of Parliament into the grounds, where a policeman, we believe, was stabbed and shots were fired, and the air ambulance has taken people from that location as well. That is the latest information that we had. This part of London is now in lockdown, tube services suspended, the roads closed, and people being urged to stay away at the time being.
So, as I was saying, communication quite challenging here at the moment. An awful lot of police activity. Helicopters in the air. We've seen armed police officers with balaclavas who have been moving around the area. We've seen the fire service head in within the last few moments as well. Robert Nisbet is here. And Robert, we were speaking just a few moments ago about this silver Jaguar. or silver vehicle that was whisked away very soon after the incident.
Going extremely fast, the car, and it parted all of us and the people who are running away from the scene, and someone went, "That's the Prime Minister, that's the Prime Minister," and we all kind of trained our...
Stand by. Scotland Yard to make a statement in 15 minutes is what we're being told. Scotland Yard just a little bit further along the river than where we are to make a statement in 15 minutes. They've already told us that this is terror-related, as you would anticipate. Keep going.
So all of our cameras were kind of trained on this silver Jaguar as it sped away, and it went down just one of these side streets at extreme speed, and that, we understand, was the Prime Minister being evacuated extremely rapidly from the building.
Prime Minister's question time today, of course.
It was indeed, and many of the MPs still in the chamber. Obviously, Wednesday is a very busy parliamentary day. A number of them were told that they had to stay where they were, in effect, not so much lockdown, but they were listening to what was going on and watching Sky News and television around inside the House of Parliament to try to ascertain what had happened. But some of them heard the shots in the Old Palace Yard and obviously knew that it was a major...
For people who don't know what Old Palace Yard is, geographically?
Yeah, it's inside the compound of the Palace of Westminster, just the other side of the railings from where the tourists are taking their pictures. So literally just over the railings inside the Palace of Westminster compound, so very close to the road and very close to where this trail of carnage had been left by the car as it went up onto the pavement and then eventually ended up crashed into the railings.
Now, I was chatting to the political editor of The Sun just a few moments ago, Tom Newton-Dunn. We'll be hearing from him shortly. He's found himself outside the court and desperately trying to get back in, obviously, to file his story. But he was saying that there is a very obvious weak spot, if you will, as far as security is concerned at the Palace of Westminster, because the gates need to be open and closed all the time for vehicles to go about their business.
That's right. I mean, at other access points around the Palace of Westminster, it is incredibly secure. You have to show your pass even to get anywhere near the security gates. But at that particular ingress and egress point, that is where MPs and Lords drive their cars in. Some drive themselves, some are driven in there. And at the moment, it's kind of a metal barrier that is pulled back and the car goes in, and then the metal barrier is put forward. Isn't it? On a wheel, that's right. And they shout at tourists and workers, stand back, and we all stand on the side of the pavement, and then when the car's in, everybody walks past. And to someone who was very security conscious, they may look at that and say, that's quite an anachronism. We don't know whether it was actually through that or whether it was through the next gate with turnstiles just down from there. That's a little confused. Both of them link on to the Old Palace Yard, but clearly this is something they're going to be looking at once all the dust has settled on this incident.
What we also don't know at this stage is it's two separate incidents, is it not? It's two separate incidents, but we don't know whether the person that has been shot by police or apprehended by police within Palace Yard, what you described, where he was stopped, if it's the same person that was the driver of the vehicle. We don't know at this stage.
Or whether it was a passenger in the car that jumped out. I mean, one of the eyewitnesses we spoke to very soon after here on Sky News, a gentleman called Alan Parry, who works for Sky Sports News, he said he saw a man leap out of the car, suggested he may have been in his 30s and 40s, and just saw him running. He didn't see where he ran to, but clearly the man who crashed the car got out of it very quickly. We don't know whether he went then into the Palace of Westminster.
Stand by if you would, please. We're talking about security here in Cordons. It's been quite challenged to get from where our offices are in West London as close as we have done so far. Police ticker tape is everywhere, as you can imagine. There's a lot of people wandering around quite bewildered, not really sure what's going on. Within the Palace of Westminster itself, there is a lockdown there. Many MPs still inside the chamber of the House of Commons where they had gathered for Prime Minister's question time. They're there for the foreseeable future until they're told by the security services that it is safe to leave. This is still very much an active terrorist situation. They do not know what else might happen. As a result, they're going to keep those MPs where they are until they have the all clear. The same for tourists as well. Very busy part of the city as far as tourism is concerned. The Palace of Westminster here, Big Ben, many come here, Westminster Bridge to see up and down the river. And then just across the river, that's where you'll see, and I'm sure many of you have been there already, the London Eye. Those pods that take about 35 minutes or something like that to go around. People are stuck on those at the moment. They are not being allowed off, again, for obvious reasons that I've just explained to you. Alistair Bunkle is there for us, our defence correspondent. As we hear more sirens here, Alistair, talk to us about what's happening where you are.
Yeah, Case, we've relocated, a couple of hundred metres along from where we last spoke to you, which was on Westminster Bridge itself, down just under the foot of the London Eye. People are being allowed off now, but very slowly, so they're bringing the pods around one by one and allowing people off them. But there's still quite a lot of people actually left on there. I would estimate, 50 or 100 people still on there, perhaps, waiting patiently for the pods to come round and to be allowed off. But they are being, the eye is being evacuated now. Let me bring in a man, a gentleman called Yuvraj. You were an eyewitness to the attack, weren't you? Can you tell me what you saw in your own words?
Yeah, I was standing right opposite the road when this happened. So a black car, it rushed in. Highly, it was speeding, and at first it went on the pavement, it took a lady off, and I thought it was just a normal accident, but it suddenly continued speeding and it just began taking people off, and just witnessed people flying off, and it was a horrible sight.
It was a black car, did you say?
It was a black car, yeah.
And from your sense at the time, this was all deliberate, it wasn't out of control, it wasn't accidental?
It was all deliberate. Because taking so many people off together, it can't be an accident for sure. And that too coming in such high speed, so definitely can't be an accident.
I spoke to one gentleman about half an hour ago who said he thought he saw that car then crashed into, in his words, a wall. No one inside it when he saw it. Did you see it crash? Do you corroborate that?
I didn't see the car crash, actually. I just saw it taking people off, and by the time it went to the end of the bridge, it was out of my sight. I was on the other side of it, and I just saw it hitting people. I didn't see the car going anywhere else. So.
The bridge presumably quite busy at the time, early afternoon, Westminster?
Surprisingly, the other side of the bridge where this accident happened was empty, so the car could easily speed. Otherwise, it is usually a very busy bridge. But surprisingly, it was pretty empty at that time, the other side of it.
And what was your immediate reaction? What did you do? Did you run away? Did you stay and help?
I was pretty traumatized by it because it's the first time I witnessed something like that. And I could just stand still. I was just traumatized by it. I couldn't do anything about it. I really wanted to help the people, but I was myself not in the right state of mind.
Some people have told us they heard gunshots. Other people say they didn't hear gunshots. Did you?
I didn't hear any gunshots from where I was, but I really don't know anything about the gunshots.
And the condition of some of the people who were on the bridge who had been hit by the car?
Horrible, probably. I think some of them might even have died on the spot, and some of them must be severely injured, but it was a horrible incident altogether.
Okay, Yuvraj, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just to quickly, before I hand back to you, just give you some indication of around here. I have to say, it is a lot of, I suppose it's a combination of people probably starting to return home from work as we head towards 5 o'clock in the evening. A lot of tourists around here, as is the case every day of the year, whatever the weather, and those who are waiting to get off the London Eye, who have been kept on the London Eye. Some of the emergency services are actually in the London Eye at the moment. It's obviously been sealed off for anyone who wanting to go on it now. The police are there, and one by one they are bringing people off it, but very, very slowly indeed. Assuming that people on the Eye do know what is going on, I don't think anybody would have any complaints. And the police helicopter, as I'm sure you can hear, flying overhead. The only last thing I would add, by way of an update, is having spoken to my security contacts, for them as well, this is a very fluid and ongoing situation as they are trying to assess and trying to piece together exactly what is going on using their intelligence sources, but also things like eyewitness accounts.
Okay, Alistair, for now, thank you. We can hear that police helicopter as well. You're about 100 metres or so, maybe a couple of hundred metres away from where we are. Don't forget, we are waiting for a police update. Just off the road there, guys, the police are coming through. We are waiting for a police update, and that police update is likely to be within the next 10 minutes or so, is what we're hearing from Scotland Yard. They have already told us, though, that it is being treated as a terrorist incident for now. Whether it's one incident or two, and whether they are linked, hopefully we'll hear more from the police in around about 10 minutes' time. We just got this still that we'd like to show to you. You can see there's a man on the ground. Just looking at those images, a man on the ground being surrounded by police officers. As far as the geography of that shot is concerned, not really sure, but the cobbles might suggest that it is in Old Palace Yard as we hear more sirens. That's an ambulance heading just out of the direction. His legs are bare, as you can see from that image, and we are anticipating at this stage that he... I'm afraid to have to tell you that, according to Sky sources, within the last few moments, as we continue to look at that image of who is potentially a man that tried to stab a police officer inside the Palace of Westminster, or within the confines of the Palace of Westminster, that 2 people are now reportedly dead as a result of this terror incident in central London. Mark White is with us. Mark, several other people injured, but the latest we're hearing, according to Sky sources, is that at least 2 people have been confirmed dead. What more do we know?
Yeah, a source just confirming that to me in the last couple of minutes, Kay. Information that he has that now 2 people have died as a result of the incident that has unfolded outside the palaces of Westminster and on Westminster Bridge. Now, in terms of that second fatality, we know that the first fatality was a woman who died. We were told by a doctor at St Thomas's Hospital that there are other people that are being treated there with catastrophic injuries. What we don't know with regard to the second fatality is whether that is someone who was struck by the vehicle on Westminster Bridge and also outside the palaces of Westminster. We should add that there are 3 separate scenes here, Kay. There is Westminster Bridge, where up to 12 people, we understand, were knocked down. Then there is outside the palaces of Westminster, where this 4x4 Hyundai vehicle smashed into the main railings there. A number of other people injured there. And then in the palaces of Westminster itself, just in the Old Palace Yard, a police officer was stabbed and the alleged attacker was shot by armed officers who were nearby the palaces of Westminster at the time. We don't know if the latest fatality that is being reported to us was anyone connected with the 2 other incidents away from Westminster Bridge. What we do know is that in about 5-6 minutes' time from now, Commander B.J. Harrington, senior officer at Scotland Yard, I was with him just at the weekend on a counter-terrorism exercise on the River Thames, will be making a statement in which he's expected to give a bit more detail on the unfolding incident and perhaps shed a bit more light on the injuries suffered by that police officer. We believe initial reports suggest he was seriously injured, but at this stage we have no further details than that, except he was seriously injured and taken to St Thomas's Hospital. But the information that a source has just told me with regard to the overall number of dead and injured at the moment is that there are 2 confirmed fatalities and multiple people that have been injured. Some of those, according to an earlier source, a doctor at St Thomas's Hospital, have suffered catastrophic injuries.
OK. For now, thank you, Mark. I know you'll continue to update us as and when you get more. We are expecting more from Scotland Yard very shortly. Indeed, they have already confirmed that this is being treated as a terrorist incident. We've heard from Mark there that Sky sources telling us that 2 people are now confirmed dead. One of them, a woman. We'll get more information and update you on that. We can also tell you that people are still trapped on the London Eye, which is just across the river from... you actually go across Westminster Bridge in order to get to the London Eye. People are being kept in those pods for their own safety. We are being told that they will be taken off one at a time as and when it becomes safe for them. Looking at Old Palace Yard as well, and we believe that that is where one man was tackled to the ground by the police. And Robert is with us still. Robert, so this guy who was in Old Palace Yard, as we're looking at these images now, we don't know who he is, we don't know whether he was in the vehicle, but we do know that he was stopped by the police and he had a knife and he potentially attacked a police officer.
That's right. I mean, from what we hear from the eyewitnesses that we have spoken to, he appeared to be in either his 30s or his 40s, of Asian appearance. As you say, once he got into Old Palace Yard, that is when he appears to have attacked the police officer, stabbed him with a knife, and again, eyewitnesses saying between 7 and 8 inches, so a long bladed knife. Then he was was shot by the colleagues of the injured police officer, and we have now, of course, mobile phone footage of that man apparently lying on the ground in Old Palace Yard. But who he is, whether he was working with somebody else, whether he was the man at the wheel of the car that has caused those number of injuries and eventually ended up crashing into the railings outside the Palace of Westminster, we just don't know yet.
Terrorist incident at the heart of Parliament.
And as Mark was pointing out, just a few days after they carried out an anti-terror demonstration, you know, to show how ready they were, that was on the river, that just went past Westminster Bridge. I mean, this is just a few days ago. Obviously, Parliament, London, along with other capitals, has been on a state of alert for the last few years after terrorist attacks around Europe that you and I have covered over the past few years. And so the response, as you would imagine, was extremely quick. We understand 6 minutes from the time that this initial incident happened on Westminster Bridge to police arriving there. But obviously you can imagine the confusion. Not just the hundreds of people who work in this part of town, but also the thousands of tourists who stand routinely on Westminster Bridge taking photographs of Big Ben and the cars going in and out of Parliament. But also, as I was explaining earlier, Wednesday is a very busy day in Parliament. So there are a lot of MPs going to and fro as well after Prime Minister's questions, as well as those tourists outside, as well as a number of people working on the roads on Parliament Square. It was an extremely busy scene, and obviously a busy scene that became a chaotic one after this car appeared to mount the pavement on Westminster Bridge.
That was an interesting scene that I just saw as we were chatting then. That was a police officer driving a satellite truck. Now, you wouldn't normally see that, but presumably that will help with their own communications as they try to coordinate exactly what is going on, perhaps moving Girl Command to here, I don't know.
And communications in and out, as we've been experiencing when everybody's up here with their mobile phones trying to send videos. Obviously the demand on data grows and they become less reliable. It's much harder to get a phone signal out, and of course it's vital now that they are communicating information, as you say, both in and out, and they need that to be done quickly and rapidly. So they will bring in their own kind of comms backup, their own comms unit to facilitate that.
And one of the big challenges for the security services now, of course, is that they have hundreds of MPs that are still in lockdown in the building behind us. Straight to Scotland Yard.
In the area of Parliament Square, and the Senior National Coordinator has declared this a terrorist incident. And although we remain open-minded to the motive, a full counter-terrorism investigation is already underway. This is led by the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command. At this stage, I will confirm what we know has happened, but I will not speculate. We received a number of different reports, which included a person in the river, a car in collision with pedestrians, and a man armed with a knife. Officers were already in that location as part of routine policing, but immediately additional officers were sent to the scene, and that included firearms officers. We are working closely with the London Ambulance Service and the London Fire Brigade. I'd like to repeat our request for the public to avoid the following areas: Parliament Square, Whitehall, Westminster Bridge, Lambeth Bridge, Victoria Street up to the junction with Broadway, and the Victoria Embankment up to Embankment Tube Station. This is to allow emergency services to deal with this ongoing incident. There is an ongoing investigation being led by the Counter-Terrorism Command, and we would ask anybody who has images or film of the incident to pass those to the police. We know there are a number of casualties, including police officers, but at this stage we cannot confirm numbers or the nature of these injuries. Our response will be ongoing for some time, and it is important that we gather all possible information and evidence. Public safety is our top priority, and we are reviewing our policing stance across London and throughout the capital this afternoon. There will be additional officers on duty and deployed across the capital. I would like to ask the public to remain vigilant and let us know if they see anything suspicious that causes them concern, and if they do, to dial 999 immediately. The Acting Commissioner, Craig Mackey, is being treated as a significant witness, as he was at the scene when the incident started. Whilst he is not injured, it would be inappropriate for him to be here to talk about the incident at this stage. Our thoughts and his thoughts are with all of those involved and responding to that incident this evening. I would stress that if anyone has information about today's incident, they are urged to call 0800 789 321. And I would stress, if the public have any information or see anything suspicious, to dial 999 immediately.
At this stage, does the incident seem to be over?
I'm not going to speculate. You'll see the response that we've got here, officers responding. I want to stress that it's our priority to keep London safe. People going home this evening will see additional officers deployed, both armed and unarmed, across London in order to achieve that aim.
Gunshots fired, gunshots fired.
I've told you what information I have, and we will continue to keep you updated as we find things out. I'm not prepared to speculate. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to thank you very much for your time here this evening. I would absolutely stress to the public, one priority, working with our partners.
OK, so armed and unarmed officers deployed to keep Londoners safe this evening is what we're being told. We also heard that several people have been injured, including police officers. No confirmation of fatalities, but Sky sources telling us that at least 2 people have died as a result of this terrorist incident right in the centre of London this afternoon. Mark White, our Home Affairs correspondent, has been monitoring what the police have had to say for us, is still with us. Mark, didn't give us that much.
No, I mean, in these incidents, the police certainly confirm the bare minimum of facts, but there was significant information in there as well in terms of this absolutely is now being treated as a terrorist incident, that it is, for all intents and purposes, still an ongoing incident. We have many officers still carrying out a systematic search of the palaces of Westminster, looking for any other attackers that might be there. Although we are working on the theory that there was one attacker armed with a knife, these are, by their very nature, fast-moving and confusing incidents, and it is possible there could be other people, and that's why the police, out of an abundance of caution, and because they've also seen many incidents and terrorist-related incidents in other cities around the world where you have multiple attackers and multiple scenes, they have to make sure that everything is locked down and safe. On the right of the picture there, Kay, are the officers from the Counter-Terrorism Specialist Firearms Command. They are part of SCO 19 firearms unit from the Metropolitan Police, but they are the elite. They train regularly to counter the threat of a terrorist attack, and they have been involved in these systematic searches at the palaces of Westminster. At the moment, what the police are doing clearly is to try to get on top of what has happened intelligence-wise. They want to establish whether this was a lone incident involving one attacker or whether there could be multiple incidents, because again, we have seen just a year ago, in fact, this is the first anniversary of the devastating attacks in Brussels, that there wasn't just one scene. There was the bombing scene at the airport, and then there was another attack at a metro station across the city. So the police are mindful of that. They've seen this pattern before. So that's why you see, for instance, where Alistair Bunkle is outside the London Eye, that big public gathered areas where many people gather get locked down as well, and they slowly but surely make sure these areas are safe. So that's why we're seeing this kind of approach by the emergency services and by the police. They also want Kay to send out a message of reassurance. They're dealing with this incident here, which is one terrorist incident, we believe, but it has 3 components. And the first component, of course, was that devastating attack on the bridge, where this car ploughed into up to a dozen people, we're told, on the bridge, resulting in some absolutely horrific injuries and the death, we believe, of one woman. Then the vehicle careered down the road into Parliament Square itself and smashed into the fence, the perimeter fence around the palaces of Westminster. Now, a source told me that there are other injured people from that scene as well, people that were on the pavement just at the spot where the vehicle smashed into the fence. And then, of course, we have the third incident that where the alleged attacker left the vehicle, managed somehow to wrestle his way through the gates there and into Old Palace Yard in the grounds of the palaces of Westminster proper, and it was there that there was this confrontation with the police officer. That officer, we're told, was stabbed. At this stage, we don't have a condition on the officer, but a source told me that he was seriously injured. And also, we're told that the attacker himself was shot by a police officer. That attacker shot multiple times. We've seen a picture that is on the Mail Online website that shows the attacker, the alleged attacker, on a stretcher receiving CPR from paramedics as he's put into the back of an ambulance. Let's just remind ourselves of what Commander B.J. Harrington from the Metropolitan Police just said to us on the steps of New Scotland Yard just a couple of minutes ago.
Since 2:40 this afternoon, the MPS has responded to an incident in the area of, and the Senior National Coordinator has declared this a terrorist incident. And although we remain open-minded to the motive, a full counter-terrorism investigation is already underway. This is led by the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command. At this stage, I will confirm what we know has happened, but I will not speculate. We received a number of different reports, which included a person in the river, a car in collision with pedestrians, and a man armed with a knife. Officers were already in that location as part of routine policing, but immediately additional officers were sent to the scene, and that included firearms officers.
So that is Commander B.J. Harrington from the Metropolitan Police, a man with a lot of experience in dealing with the threat from terrorism. I was at an exercise with him just at the weekend on Sunday there, where his officers, his specialist, counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers, were exercising, enacting a scenario with hostages on the River Thames. And now today, just a few days later, he finds himself in the midst of a terrorist attack for real, and a significant event that is unfolding here in the heart of central London, outside the palaces of Westminster, where a vehicle ploughed onto the pavement on Westminster Bridge for a considerable distance across that bridge, striking multiple people. We're told that up to a dozen have been injured, some of those with horrific injuries. One person, we're told, a woman died on the bridge. Then there was another incident where people were injured when that same vehicle, having rounded the corner into Parliament Square, smashed into the front fence, the perimeter fence around the palaces of Westminster. Other people injured and treated by paramedics at the scene. The alleged attacker, we understand, according to a senior source that I was speaking to a short time ago, left that vehicle, ran through the gates and into the old palace yard within the grounds of the palaces of Westminster. That officer, a police officer, managed to confront and tackle the attacker, but then was stabbed. Now, the officer is injured. We believe that he suffered serious injuries, but there is no further update from Scotland Yard yet on his condition. All we can tell you is that from a doctor at St Thomas's Hospital, there is one fatality that he was reporting, and other people with catastrophic injuries. A senior source told me a short time ago that that fatality toll has now risen to 2. 2 people killed in this unfolding incident. Police now, their priority is to ensure there are no other attackers. What they also are trying to do is to determine whether this was a one-off incident, who this individual was. Clearly, they have him in their custody at the moment. They'll be gathering that detail to determine whether he was what they call a lone wolf actor, or whether indeed he may have been acting with others. You're watching Sky News, continuing coverage of this unfolding terrorist attack in the heart of central London. We'll be right back bringing you more details, but what we know at the moment is 2 dead, multiple people injured.
Do you need help solving your laptop problems?
I've just got a laptop and I've been told that I should back up my files.
Well, I've got a printer, but I can't seem to connect it.
I'm concerned about security issues.
But we don't understand some of the terminology.
I don't know what cookies are.
Phishing. Spam.
We'd like to prevent
All right, everyone, you are looking at a live look at London now. We know 2 people killed in this London attack. Investigators are launching a terror-related investigation. Again, officials are investigating this as terrorism. We're hearing from Sky News in the UK that at least 2 people were killed. We're going to update you with what we know so far in just a couple minutes. All right, everyone, we are going to give you the latest update and headlines courtesy of the Associated Press. Again, this incident has been declared a terrorist incident, according to a senior police commander, and a full counterterrorism investigation is underway. Commander B.J. Harrington says a number of people have been injured, including police officers. He says additional police officers, armed and unarmed, will be deployed across London during the evening rush hour as part of efforts to keep people safe. Now we know the Scottish Parliament in Edinburgh also suspended its debate on a second independence referendum after the incident outside the British Parliament in London. Scottish lawmakers had been planning to vote after 2 days of debate on First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's call for another referendum on leaving the UK. The debate was suspended after some members said it should be halted out of respect after a policeman was stabbed and his attacker shot in London. Now, a doctor says a woman has died and about a dozen people are hurt with some catastrophic injuries after a vehicle apparently struck pedestrians on Westminster Bridge near Parliament. We know one of those dead was described as a female pedestrian. All right, joining me now for more on this London attack is Ron Hoon. Ron, we're looking at one of the scenes in London. So many police officers have responded to this scene. It is one of those things that you don't want to have to report on.
No, and I know you and I have both been to London in recent months, and because, you know, here in the U.S. and in the U.K., they have great counter-terrorism efforts that are underway. They were at, I believe, at the next to highest level in the UK in terms of their terror alert system.
Right.
And you hardly even think about it, you know, and yet here is a city that is just jammed with people, both locals and tourists, who, by the way, are trapped as we speak by the hundreds on the London Eye, even though it is you know, the attack happened on the bridge. The London Eye, which is apparently now the most popular tourist attraction in London, was immediately shut down. And I guess the feeling is they don't want to let people off those enclosed plexiglass capsules until they can be sure that they're letting them off in a safe situation. The Victoria Embankment on the other side of the river is also shut down right now. The whole area between the London Eye area, the Westminster Bridge itself, Parliament, and the embankment on the other side of the London Eye would be jammed with people I know it was. I was there in December. When were you there?
I was there at the end of January.
Okay. And those aren't the busiest times of the year.
Well, it's a lot colder then.
Yeah. And yet it was, I remember how many people were on the bridge. And I remember at one point stopping to take a picture and thinking, boy, those cars come zipping right by here. And so in an instant, lives have been changed. They are treating it as a terror incident. And it was interesting listening to the news conference that was held by police in the last half hour that the acting commissioner was actually on scene when this whole thing unfolded and is now being treated as an eyewitness.
Wow.
So that's why he was not there for the press briefing from law enforcement. They said it wouldn't be appropriate at this time because basically he still has information to give in terms of what he saw and what he witnessed.
This must have been such a scary thing for people to witness. It's just, again, all these people going about their normal Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening.
Yeah.
They're in London now. We started covering this attack about a couple of hours ago. London, 7-8 hours ahead of us? 8 hours ahead of us.
Yeah, 8 hours now, I believe, is right with the time change. Correct.
Right. So it is early evening there in London now, and you don't expect something like this to happen on your Wednesday afternoon.
You don't. And the very first thing we heard were reports of shots fired.
Right.
And so immediately you start to try to process, okay, what is the information that it happened there along the bridge or near Parliament, and then it came out that the shots that were fired, they have some pretty strict gun regulations there in the UK. The shots that were fired were by a police officer on hand right there at the Parliament.
Right.
And you saw that one image, I presume, from Sky News, a lot of good images they've had over the last hour or two, where it looked like they were able to take that one suspect into custody. He was literally surrounded by law enforcement who had him down on the ground. They will be able to glean a lot of information from him. But there was concern about that, reports of a second person.
Right, I did see those reports.
Who may have escaped.
Right.
So a lot more to come as the hours unfold. Actively, the situation is, it's locked down right now. It appears we know what we know. And there hasn't been a lot of new information in the last, say, hour or so, except for the fact that now they are confirming 2 dead and many others injured.
Right, and I want to go back to something you just pointed out. When we initially heard about this report, all we heard was shots fired, and it's interesting to see how the story develops as we learn more information. When you initially hear shots fired outside of Parliament, I think the average person would think there is a gunman on the loose that's trying to attack perhaps government officials or people related to that. Now we're learning that the shots were fired by a police officer who was trying to take down the knife-wielding suspect.
Yes, right.
So the suspect used a vehicle to injure pedestrians on the bridge.
Right.
And then also had a knife.
Yeah.
So was trying to harm people that way as well.
Yeah, and this is Wednesday afternoon. It's the one day of the week that the Prime Minister is inside the Parliament building. Prime Minister's questions has just been a staple of British politics forever, and if you watch much TV news or live streaming, you know that the Prime Minister enters that building every Wednesday afternoon. So maybe it was coincidence that it happened on Wednesday afternoon. Maybe it was coincidence it happened on the 1-year anniversary of the Brussels terror attack. It's all unclear at this point. It'll become clear in the coming hours. We'll learn a lot more. By this time tomorrow, we'll know a lot more about the attacker or attackers, about those whose lives were lost, about others who were injured, and I'm sure probably by the end of the day we will hear some sort of an address to the British people by the Prime Minister herself. All of this is happening under the backdrop of the war on terror and a real vibrant discussion in both the US and the UK in terms of how far do you go to try to protect the citizenry. And Donald Trump, in part was elected on that pledge to protect the country, specifically from terrorism. And the reports we get out of Mosul are very encouraging, that the fight against ISIS is going very well. We don't know if ISIS was responsible for this or not. But
It could be something that was an ISIS-inspired attack.
Could be. It could be a lone wolf. It could be so many different things.
Right.
The only report that I've heard is that one of the people that jumped out of the car appeared to be in their 30s.
30s or 40s.
30s
right.
or 40s. So maybe not especially a young person. You know, like sometimes you see the pictures of an ISIS fighters who are 18,
right.
20, etc.
So,
but we don't know yet who was really behind it, or who inspired it.
Right, and you mentioned President Trump making terror a top concern on his agenda.
Right.
He hasn't yet tweeted about this. I just checked the real Donald Trump Twitter page as well as his President of the United States Twitter handle.
Right.
He hasn't yet commented on the situation. However, Sean Spicer did tweet out just almost 2 hours ago that the President of the United States had been briefed on the situation in the UK and they are continuing to monitor and update. So we do have a somewhat official statement from the White House.
We'll see. We'll see as the days go on here how much more tweeting we see from President Trump. It's funny. Funny, not haha, but funny, ironical, that I was actually thinking about this just this morning, that with those reports yesterday that Ivanka was moving into the West Wing. She was going to have an office in the West Wing. I remember thinking to myself, I think we'll probably hear a lot less from the president on Twitter.
Oh, you think she's going to calm him down?
I really do.
Presence.
I really do. I mean, I saw a story yesterday that basically was along the lines of don't count on Ivanka Trump totally buttoning down the president or, kind of cleaning up around the edges there at the White House in terms of some of the things that people have found off the mark. Nevertheless, I don't think she would be moving into a West Wing office unless she felt like she needed to be there. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll see him tweet more than ever. He'll just tweet up a firestorm. But my first reaction to it was that I think we'll probably see a lot less of that. I would imagine he's already been on the phone with Theresa May, with the British Prime Minister. And I would think we would hear from the president at some point. But probably not, and coordinated, but probably not until after Theresa May has spoken.
Right. It's so often after these major attacks, we did see President Obama come out and give a statement, issue a statement, typically in the White House press briefing room. So it will be interesting to see how President Trump responds to this, considering this seems to be the first sort of major terror-related attack while he's president.
Yes, that's a good point. And also, think about this in terms of, the kind of the silent police force as well as MI6 and everything else that they have, and MI5 that, that helps to protect their homeland over in the UK. There was the terrorist attack where a bomb went off many years ago on a tourist bus in London. That's been a long time. I mean, it was post 9/11, but it's been many years. And all in all, they've done a pretty good job of protecting the public there across the British capital.
Right, so I actually have a list of all the terror attacks in London since 2005, courtesy of Fox News. So you have the July 7th attack, the coordinated series of suicide attacks, which 3 bombs exploded on the underground trains, and then, as you mentioned, the double-decker bus exploding.
Hard to believe that, by the way, was almost 12 years ago.
Right.
Wow.
52 people were killed, 700 injured.
Yes.
Now, just a couple weeks later, there were 4 more bombings unconnected with those earlier that month. They were attempted, however, they failed to detonate.
Right.
Then you have 2 years later, June 2007, 2 unexploded car bombs discovered in London. Obviously, no injuries there. May 2013, a British Army soldier attacked and killed near the Royal Artillery Barracks in southeast London. December 2015, you have a man with a knife stabbing a number of people at a tube station, which is basically the subway station, saying this is for Syria. But really, the most deadly attack still is that July 2005 one. It seems like they've really tightened up security, and you haven't seen that kind of devastation in London since, thankfully.
That's exactly right. And we do remember that British Army soldier. The pictures were really gruesome in terms of not only that, but the guy who apparently was the attacker. And so here we are now in 2017, and it's just a reminder of the threat that continues to exist and probably will for years and years to come.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just in terms of advancing where we go from here, I would imagine a lot of the eyewitnesses now are probably being interviewed by police. They don't seem to kind of be, quote, hanging around in that same area where we were hearing from them earlier, what we heard from the media. The situation is more calm now on Westminster Bridge, but still, people are just dealing with the shock. And London wakes up tomorrow morning, I think, with a new sense of its vulnerability as a world capital, that while most of the terrorism that we have seen in recent years has been on the European mainland, that they can be subject to it as well. And it's heartbreaking, and it's sad, and it's aggravating all at once.
It's interesting you mentioned that. When I went to London, obviously I was concerned because it seems to be that, major European cities are targeted. But when I spoke with my family, they're, I guess the way people make themselves feel better is the fact that the UK is an island.
Yes.
They don't feel like they face the same threat that perhaps nations like Germany and France do.
Correct. Although I have heard a statistic today in terms of the multiple reports that you and I have both been paying attention to, is that on the radar screen of British intelligence and police is are roughly 3,000 radicalized individuals.
Wow.
So
I mean,
they know.
It could easily be homegrown terrorism. If indeed it is terrorism, it could be homegrown.
It sure
Similar
could.
to the issues that we have in the U.S. It's
Yes.
not so much immigrants that are coming in that are causing these sorts of attacks, but rather people that already exist in the country that feel angry, that want to harm people.
And in the social media age that we're in, are pretty easily influenced or brainwashed or led down a path toward committing these horrible acts that I guess in some way they think will advance their cause or get people to think the same way they think without realizing what it does is it raises the frustration level and I think even the anger level that people have toward those who would use this type of devastation, murder, to try to get any kind of bizarre point across. So let me just see, just added here a couple of additional information. One man who was just entering Parliament for a meeting told the British Press Association he heard a radio message confirming that an officer had been stabbed. And this was all going on in those moments afterwards. He said, when I got inside, I was wondering what was going on. I saw dozens of panicked people running down the street. The first stream was about 30 people, and then there was a second stream of about 70 people, and it looked like they were running for their lives because...
of course, I mean, if you're hearing gunshots, if you're seeing an attacker, you are going to run for your life. There's no question. You don't, I mean, in that moment, you're just like, I need to get the heck out of here.
Yep. You're right in the heart of the government there, and yet they've done such a good job in the British capital of keeping traffic flowing, of keeping their houses of the people open to the public and very accessible. You can walk down the street or drive down the street right in front of Big Ben, the Palace of Westminster, that historic building, and the Parliament itself. And then you can drive right up to the Ministry of Defense and drive right along within a block or so of number 10 Downing Street, the home of the Prime Minister. So you hate to think about it, but there may be more restrictions ultimately that do go into place here.
I mean, safety is the utmost concern.
Correct.
And that is the priority there.
Yeah.
I do want to go ahead and check in with Sky News. They've been doing nonstop coverage of this attack, obviously.
Okay.
This is their territory. Sky News out of the UK. Let's go ahead and listen in there.
I would like the Ulster public to remain vigilant and let us know if they see anything suspicious that causes them concern, and if they do, to dial 999 immediately. The Acting Commissioner, Craig Mackey, is being treated as a significant witness, as he was at the scene when the incident started. Whilst he is not injured, it would be inappropriate for him to be here to talk about the incident at this stage. Our thoughts and his thoughts are with all of those involved and responding to that incident this evening.
Well, that was the update from Scotland Yard around about three-quarters of an hour or so ago. Since then, Sky sources have confirmed to us that at least 2 people have died as a result of this terror incident in central London, the very heart of Westminster, at lunchtime today. Remarkably, a woman has been pulled alive from the River Thames. We're not sure whether she was pushed into the river after that vehicle mounted the pavement on Westminster Bridge and ploughed into at least a dozen people there, or whether she had jumped into the river in order to try to get away from that vehicle. She has now been recovered from the river. She is in a poorly condition, but she is alive, is the latest that we're hearing. There was a lockdown of MPs. They could not leave the chamber of the House of Commons for some considerable time. That has just been lifted within the last few moments, and MPs are now being allowed to leave. Just across the river, the other side of Westminster Bridge, London Eye. Just looking at these live helicopter pictures of the vehicle that rammed into the railings in Parliament Square. Now, this is the same vehicle that I was mentioning to you a couple of moments ago that had actually ploughed into at least a dozen people on Westminster Bridge. It then continued on its journey and ploughed into the railings at just in front of Big Ben. In fact, those are live aerial shots as we're speaking to you. As I was saying, MPs are now being allowed out of the chamber of the House of Commons to go about their business again, and we will hope to speak to some of them in the fullness of time. Meantime, the other side of Westminster Bridge, people were trapped on the London Eye there in those pods. It takes around about 35 minutes or thereabouts to go around. They have been kept inside those pods for their own safety for some considerable time. But once again, they are now being allowed to come out of those pods. And Alistair Bunkle is there for us, our defence correspondent. Alistair, what can you see?
All right, thank you very much indeed. We're at David St Thomas's. I think we can talk now to John Woodcock, the MP, who heard the gunshots earlier on.
When we left here
John Woodcock, thanks for being with us.
People were starting to come on.
Alistair, we've got one or two problems hearing you just at the moment. We'll come back to you in just a moment or two. We're just going to try and re-establish communication with you. As you can imagine, there's a lot of news crews from right around the world here just at the moment, along with the police communications as well. So it's making it incredibly challenging on occasion to be able to communicate here at Sky News, but we are doing our level best for you. Just to recap, we are being told that at least 2 people have died as a result of this terrorist incident today. Many other people have been injured, and Jason Farrell, some of them catastrophic injuries.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know exactly the nature of the injuries, but obviously if someone rams onto pavement, you're likely to have serious problems. We know that one individual was thrown down the steps of the bridge, and that's quite a hard fall onto the concrete below. It seems as if another woman was actually tossed over the side of the bridge and into the river, and that's quite a hard fall. You know, that's quite a distance down into the river, and that person has been pulled out of the river and is apparently okay.
Okay, I know you're going to continue monitoring Twitter for us just for a second, if you wouldn't mind, because I do want to bring in Alistair Bunkle again. I think we can hear you now, Alistair.
Yeah, can you hear me right now? I think that's slightly better. As you were saying, there's a lot of different communications going on around here, so a little bit of interference. We are on the south side of Westminster Bridge. You can see just behind us the watery sun there, Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament. I must say it's probably slightly quieter and calmer here in terms of emergency services being around and about, not quite as frantic as it was when we first arrived a couple of hours ago. But I don't think there are any fewer vehicles here. There are no fewer ambulances. There are still, I can count, about 8 or 9 ambulances on the bridge, and that's all I can see with my eyes. There are potentially more as you sort of head over the bridge and towards the middle of the river. We've been speaking to a number of eyewitnesses who were here at the time or came in the minutes afterwards, and a lot of them giving very similar reports. They saw this car clearly, deliberately targeting people who were on the bridge and running them over and hitting them. All of them said they saw many people injured lying on the bridge as this car continued to drive over. A lot of people extremely shaken up. I have seen a video, a very graphic video, filmed by one young man who was on the bridge at the time, and it does show some severely injured people, including one person beneath the wheels of a London bus. Another man that we spoke to, Albert, had to leave his car, abandon his car, was told to do so by the police, so that is still on the bridge, and some plainclothes, a team of about 10 plainclothes police have just made their way onto the bridge because, of course, this will not only be a scene, a medical scene, whilst they treat any injured that are still there, but it is a forensic scene as well, so they'll be gathering what they can do. And just a word, Kay, on the Cobra meeting that we're expecting the Prime Minister to chair imminently. Of course, you would expect that the heads of intelligence agencies will be there as well to bring her and other members of the government up to speed. In situations like this, it is common practice for not only the three intelligence agencies and the Metropolitan Police in this country to talk to each other very closely, to work very closely with one another in trying to identify who is behind this, the motive, etc. But also they will be speaking to their foreign counterparts, their European counterparts, seeing what information and what intelligence they can gather from anyone that they tend to liaise with around the world, the Americans as well, to see whether they can pick up any sort of chatter, any indications as to who was behind this. But at the moment, from the people I've been speaking to, as you would expect rightly in the hours after an attack like this, it is an incredibly fluid situation, and they have a lot of work to do, and they are doing that now, and they are trying to piece things together, but it is very, very early stages.
Okay. Okay, Alistair, back to you shortly. Going to Darren McCaffrey in just a second, but just want to bring in Jason again. Interesting photographs that are appearing on Twitter. We'll get them to show to you very shortly. But
yeah, Tobias Ellwood, the Minister for Counter-Terrorism, is in amongst it. He looks like he's helping the victims. You can see real shock on his face and blood on his face as well. So it looks as though he was involved in helping some of the victims who've been severely injured by this attack. And then we've also got a picture, the first picture, it seems, of the attacker himself on a stretcher. It looks like he has a CPR unit on his chest. In other words, he's been stripped down and they've used CPR on him, and it looks like he's being given oxygen as well. So this is the first suggestion that obviously they've had to try to keep him alive, having shot him after the attack.
his condition as yet unknown. Reports suggesting at least two people have been killed. 3 police officers, according to Sky sources, have been injured, and 3 young primary school students from France, from Brittany, were being told by the French media, have also been caught up in this terrorist incident, been described as a terrorist incident by Scotland Yard, waiting for another update from then, also waiting for a Cobra meeting that will be led by the Prime Minister. I'm sure we'll have an update from that just as soon as that has concluded. Darren McCaffrey is at the London Eye, where lots of people were trapped on those pods. Darren, what's the latest from where you are?
Indeed, they are, Ken. Hopefully you can see my pictures where you can see that actually dozens of people are being taken off the London Eye, and they're being taken into a building close by where they're going to be interviewed by the police. Clearly, they could be potential witnesses, because if you don't know the geography of London, the London Eye overlooks the Palace of Westminster and indeed Westminster Bridge. And essentially, what happens in incidents like this, particularly in big tourist attractions that are close by, they are shut down. And the London Eye, essentially, Kay, has been closed since this incident. And the police, in the last half an hour or so, have been moving the Eye to offload people pod by pod so that they can go and interview those people. The London Eye tweeted pretty soon after the incident that they are following tried and tested procedures and are in constant contact with all guests inside. The safety and security is their top priority, but they have temporarily halted this tourist attraction. There's an awful lot of police here, and that is clearly because, yes, in an incident like this, something like the London Eye could well be a target, and they need to shut that down when large groups of people do gather. But at the same time, given the position of the London Eye, any people in those pods could potentially be witnesses. And speaking to some people here, they've been held in those pods for, several hours now. Amongst them are dozens of French students who are here visiting London, and people are gathering around here, Kay, clearly to see what is happening. And also, I don't know whether you can see over to the left-hand side, Phil, if you can just show, there are some paramedics, and I've never seen paramedics like that, who've got incredibly big armour on them, essentially, helmets and body vests to protect them. So You know, clearly it is an ongoing incident here, Kay. The police are interviewing people as they come off the London Eye, simply because they could be eyewitnesses, but there is no sign that this tourist attraction is going to open anytime soon. And for the people that are still stuck up there, and if I look up, you know, right up almost to the top, there are still people stuck there, and they will be here for a long time to come.
OK, Darren Finite, thank you. Just hearing from some sources saying that a man has been taken into A&E at St Thomas's Hospital. Now, just to give you an idea, St Thomas's Hospital is literally just the other side of where the House of Commons is. So the Westminster Bridge, where the incident first began, and where the man that we think has now been taken to the A&E department ploughed into at least a dozen people on the bridge there, just the other side. We're being told a man has just been taken into A&E at St Thomas's on a gurney, flanked by several very heavily armed police officers. That would suggest potentially that that man is still alive. No confirmation as to his condition. We have heard from the police actually within the last three-quarters of an hour or so. Let's take you to Scotland Yard now to get the very latest. Lewis is there for us. Lewis?
Yes, absolutely. About 45 minutes ago, we heard from Commander B.J. Harrington, who spoke to various journalists, not giving us a huge number of details, it has to be said, but confirming that there had been a number of casualties, one fatality, a woman, and casualties including police. Intriguingly, also confirming that one of the key witnesses to the event was, in fact, the acting commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, and said he would be recusing himself from monitoring the investigation because it wouldn't be appropriate. We do believe there may be another statement here in about 20 minutes' time, and of course we'll bring that to you if and when we get it.
OK, Finai, thank you. So another statement from the police. As you can imagine, this is a very fluid situation. Police will be updating us all the time. Jason Farrell is here with me as well. Jason, that was just a snapshot, if you will, as to where our correspondents are. It's a very contained area where this situation has developed, terrorist incident as the police have described it, but about three separate locations.
Yeah, so we're talking about the first one, which is sort of over my shoulder on the bridge. You can still see London buses. I don't know how well the camera can see behind me, but London buses stacked up on the bridge there, and they have then come round here in the vehicle that's obviously gone onto the pavement, and just at the front gate there of the Palace of Westminster, slammed into the barriers. There's been some kind of altercation outside where police officers have been injured, and then they've managed to get into the gates where, again, eventually, after an altercation, the suspect has been shot. Now, I was talking to you about Tobias Ellwood, who's obviously involved in helping out, and he is a terrorism minister, and he's also the MP for Bournemouth. And he was, in fact, his brother was killed in the Bali attack. He was giving mouth-to-mouth, I understand, to one of the police officers who had been attacked by this, who had been stabbed. So that's the latest detail I have from inside the Westminster, House of Westminster. They're also saying that a lot of the MPs and even some of the cabinet were being kept in Westminster Hall, which is just off the main yard where the attack happened. And I also understand that quite a lot of MPs heard the attack, they heard the gunfire, and some of them hit the floor, some of them ran.
That they train for.
Yeah, they're absolutely, and I mean MPs as well are told, you know, if you hear a gunfire go off, you run in the opposite, you try and work out where it is and run in the opposite direction. So they would have been absolutely expecting that this kind of thing could happen.
Okay. Let's just look at, we've got some viewer video for you. Now, we have had a look at this, and we're comfortable to show it to you at this stage. You're watching Sky News at 5. This is a viewer video, as they say, and this is what happened in Parliament Square as this situation unfolded. It's raw video. We're just going to play it to you with the sound up, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Here we go.
Shot him, bloke was running with a knife. They shot him. Police was trying to get him, he come running down there.
Okay, so what we saw there was an incident where there seemed to be some people running away from the scene. Obviously, they were aware of this vehicle that had ploughed into the railings. They tried to move away as quickly as they could. And then a short time after that, we heard the gunshots. Probably about 3 or 4, difficult to tell at this early stage. Certainly we believe that police had been firing at a man who had managed to get inside the confines of the Palace of Westminster, almost in front of Big Ben there. That's the gate that we were telling you about that is potentially incredibly vulnerable. So this is raw footage that we're looking at, Jason. This is shot by a Sky News viewer. Police incredibly quickly on the scene. I know that police are always, armed police always here, but other police very quickly on the scene too.
And you can see there actually on that footage that the gate is open. And you can see that there are just very small fences around that gate area, which would be easy to get through. As we were saying, this is a kind of slightly exposed area when it comes to a potential weakness in the building. Although you have got those big wrought iron gates, so when they're closed, they're pretty hard to get through. The other thing I noticed from that footage is that a police car has pulled up along the side, and you see police officers running out, because you have police officers all around the square. And I believe we're going to be able to show some pictures now.
We are actually. Now, we think this is the suspect. We've talked a lot about a man that was seen on the ground in Old Palace Yard. We've talked about a man being given CPR. We've talked about a man being given mouth-to-mouth. We have also heard about a man that has been taken on a gurney into St Thomas's Hospital, heavily armed. A lot of police officers around that man. That would suggest that he's potentially still alive. Mark White has got more for us. Mark, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, well, sources confirming to us that this is indeed the man that they believe to be the attacker, a man who was wielding a knife after crashing that vehicle into the perimeter fence around the Houses of Parliament. You can see that he's being worked on there by medical staff with police in close attendance, armed officers. Another thing that you can probably make out if you strain is the knife on the ground, and it looks like a large kitchen knife. Now, just to tell you what that is in relation to the screen furniture there, you can see the yellow breaking news logo that we have there. Just above that, it's now come down, but effectively you can see it just on the cobblestone there behind that man in the white shirt, and just in front of one of the armed officers there. Between the two individuals, it's a large kitchen knife with a black handle. The knife that we understand the attacker was wielding as he left that vehicle, and the information that we have at this stage is that multiple police officers were attacked and injured, up to 3 injured from the information that we have got. Those casualty figures are always quite slow in coming out officially. What we're told, though, is that Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley, who is the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officer in charge of counter-terrorism command at Scotland Yard, will be making a statement in about 15 minutes' time outside New Scotland Yard. You can see that knife there now in close-up, just behind the man there with the white shirt and the blue trousers, and in front of the armed officers there. It's from the looks of it there, it looks like one of those large kitchen knives that you can really find in any kitchen up and down the country, and that's what makes these attacks very difficult to guard against, because they are devastating in nature, but they are actually very low-tech in terms of the planning that's required. You only have to get yourself a vehicle, as clearly this attacker had that Hyundai 4x4 vehicle, and get yourself a knife. And that is all that was required to cause the absolute devastation that we saw on Westminster Bridge from fairly early on at the start of Westminster Bridge until right down towards the Houses of Parliament. That vehicle was up on the pavement, careering into pedestrians who were on that bridge, and anybody that knows that particular bridge, even at this time of year, it's very busy with tourists who flock to central London to see the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben. We can speak now to Sky's policing analyst, Graham Wetton. Now, Graham, of course, in terms of the investigation as it goes on, they'll want to establish who this individual is. They have him in custody, we know that, but the priority, of course, will be to find out whether there are any other individuals out there who may be planning similar attacks.
Mark, yeah, that's key for the investigation team, is to start looking at the background, any accomplices or support that this individual has had. So that will be key to them at the first initial, to find out who he is and what his background is, where he came from today, where the car's come from, what was in the car, any identity documents at all, and also the support, any support or assistance this man has had to get where he got today.
And former officer Peter Kirkham is alongside you there, lending his expertise to this. Peter, obviously a really horrifying event for members of the public there, but for the police officers who have to put themselves on the front line to try to tackle this attacker, end up being injured themselves. And we're told actually that the acting assistant commissioner of the Metropolitan Police was there on scene in Parliament at the time and, you know, helped out in the immediate aftermath of this incident.
Yes, indeed, Mark. I mean, our thoughts are with the families, friends and colleagues of the officers that have been injured, and we're praying for the best. They're the officers that run to the danger, and very graphically here, because there's so much footage in real time, we see quite dramatically officers running towards the danger and everybody else running away. That is what police officers do out of sight of cameras all day and every day, all across the country, and we mustn't forget that.
And we saw on our user video from one of the Sky viewers and his mobile phone, you saw an armed response vehicle just pulling up at the front gates there into the main courtyard inside Parliament, and that was really within seconds of the incident that was unfolding. The fact is, as we know, Peter, the armed response capability in the capital has been increased significantly. That will have been very important in preventing more injuries here.
Very much so. And